chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and adventure.
Kia ora, everyone. We've got another live stream. Second election in the West this week. We are here to cover the Australian election for 2025, joined by a range of co-hosts instead of just two of us this time. We've got Dylan on the back end in production again with all these wonderful graphics and making sure that things look good and our microphones work. I have interrupted playing puzzle games this evening to cover this, but perhaps Australia will have its own blueprints with a Peter Dutton win. Thank you, Jenny. That is exactly... Oh, John, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. I'm not even going to finish it. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kyle, your co-host number one. We've got our local Australian, Jenny Wu. How you doing?
I'm the local Australian. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I guess I lived in Perth for a while. And I guess someone who's lived in Australia's ass crack, I'm allowed to be on this stream as correspondent today. I'm good. I am hoping that it will be a little bit like that. This election will be like a sore trap, and that we'll get a bunch of funny jokes out of it. So could be worse.
We can only hope. And we're also joined by John Palethorpe, UK correspondent. How you doing?
Pleasure to be with you. Obviously, the real puzzle this evening is what the fuck is wrong with Australia?
A question that can never be answered. We're fresh off the Canadian election where we maybe got everything right. For those of you who are also on the live stream, Mark Carney took that one out and immediately, within a couple of days, was announcing quite right-wing policy. It's been pretty close, but the Australian Labor Party under Albanese has kept a pretty solid lead, similar to what was happening in Canada. What have either of you noticed about this election campaign? And is there anything where you can see a big upset coming? Peter Dutton just doesn't seem to know what he's doing. The Murdoch press, I guess, is as horrible as ever. But the Australian Labor Party is very clearly, more so than many other Western parties, a party of capital as well. Is there any reason for people to be choosing the Liberals at this point?
I mean, I think we had a couple of days ago, there was some kind of government survey or prediction, essentially, that was predicting, I think, maybe the worst coalition results we've seen in something like over the past 50 years. Truly quite tragic stuff. And obviously Dutton is barely human, subhuman, honestly, at this point, and continuously just shooting himself in the foot in the lead up to this election, which I found really strange. Like announcing policies like wanting to walk back stuff with curriculums and things like that, having a really, really strong or really, really difficult time actually in his home electorate. And I think there's just a really big mismatch between, and I think we'll see this thread throughout the rest of our coverage, there's a really big mismatch, I think, between the quote-unquote people's will of Australia and essentially what the government thinks are important campaign/election issues. I think the gulf between the government and the average voter is just almost impossible to cross at this stage for them in a sensible way. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see, and I hope this is for drama's sake, we get a concession call today. I think that things would go so dire for them that we get a concession call, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I think that this election has a lot less to do with 2022 and a lot more to do with 2019. In 2019, the Labour Party thought they were going to win. Bill Shorten was unpopular, but they were ahead in the polls until election evening when it all switched round. That was the third term of the coalition in, and I assume they believed that was going to continue into the next election and onwards. However, it hasn't worked out that way. Albanese got in 3 years ago. Peter Dutton, who has always been the henchman of Tony Abbott and Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison, he's the ugly brute who does the dirty work. He's like Fezzik without the charm. He has taken the leadership, and I don't think anyone expected him to get to an election because Liberal Party leaders who get here, or Liberal national leaders who get here, do not tend to last that long. And yet he has, and he's been exposed in this election as somebody who fails to connect with the electorate, doesn't understand his own policies, and sometimes seems like he's fighting a completely different election where people like him.
We're joined by Simone as well. Welcome. How you doing?
Kia ora, I've got my best very serious election special face on.
Any words for Australia in this trying time?
If I can! No, any words for Australia in a language they would understand? I'm not sure. I think this has surprised everybody. I think it was pointed out by many people that and I'm sure you've already talked about this, that Australia tends to cycle through prime ministers. And although this is a parliamentary system and it's not one where you select a president, it nevertheless is interesting that Albanese has stood the test of time, so to speak. But I think the other interesting components to it are the rise of other aspects of the electoral left. I mean, the Greens have done remarkably well in the last few years. I think that Victoria Socialists have surprised everybody, and in part that's through, I don't know if it should be considered direct action, but something kind of similar to that, right? Where you've got, well, this is my first time saying this on the stream, but we'll probably be saying it a lot. Purple Pingers has sort of shot to some kind of notoriety by connecting people who are unhoused up with housing, and that is a collective effort from a lot of people. But this is something where it raises an electoral profile. Excuse me, but it also creates, I think, a hope that even if the Australian Labor Party is dominant in the parliamentary electoral system, that there is something that moves outside of that as well. So my words for Australia are, I think, that you've surprised the global trend in the Anglophone world, that I guess we'll see how tonight shakes out, but seemingly it sort of goes against the grain. And hopefully that's not just that you're a few years behind where everybody's heading in the UK, the US, and hopefully, people can overcome the kind of centrist malaise to actually achieve things in the country.
That was actually serious.
Yeah.
Now we've all got to step it up. So that's something we've been talking about, and we're talking about on the Canadian election live stream as well, right? Is what's happening with the global trend here. I mentioned as we opened that Carney looked to potentially going towards the Starmer, kind of Starmer style of ostensibly left-wing politics that seems to have played out. Albanese has already been doing a lot of the stuff that people like Starmer and Biden have been doing, this kind of third way. I don't even know if you can't call it like labor capitalism or whatever anymore. It's just outright second party of capital stuff. So the Australian Labor Party has been, siding with Israel pretty strongly, cracking down on protesters in the same way as you were seeing in the US under Biden and under Starmer, including sending, selling material support and through armaments and the like. Alongside that, there has been more extractive stuff happening. But as Simone says, there's also been this more consolidated and successful, I think, push of the more left-wing parties trying to fill some of those gaps in a way that, in Canada, they were incredibly unsuccessful. We saw the collapse of the NDP and the Greens, who were actually not very left-wing over in Canada. In the UK, you saw some independence, but first past the post also makes things pretty nasty there. And I guess my worry is that the Australian Labor Party wins this and then gets worse because I think either way, whether it's Dutton or Albanese in charge, in some respects, Australia is New Zealand's biggest geopolitical threat. And that seems like a pretty wild thing to say, but, alongside our current government, which is maybe our second biggest geopolitical threat, they've been absolutely dominating our economy. And I don't see that slowing down under either. And if we should see some kind of wild reversal in the polling and Dutton somehow ends up prime minister, I think we seriously have to think about the possibility of an Australian-style kind of Trump policy looking at New Zealand like he looked at Canada.
Yeah, I think that is very real. I think as well, given the way that Dutton has been essentially describing himself, right? Like he's been, I think he's said multiple times to reporters that he is like Trump, he gets on better with Trump, and so that's going to be his response to dealing with the tariff situation, right? Like there's obviously been a really big pushback overseas and generally when it comes to the tariff stuff from America, and whereas Carney's approach was to essentially deride Trump and position himself, I guess, as almost anti-Trump in theory. I would say that Dutton's approach is more to be like, I can convince him to not shit all over us because him and I are the same kind of person. Effectiveness of that, I think, really, really up for debate because I think that most people in Australia don't actually want someone that gets on with Trump. And I think the scope of the comments made by Dutton about really, really hot button issues like Gaza, like immigration, things like that, I think they don't resonate with the Australian people whatsoever. So his positioning is strange. But I do think that if he were to, I guess, come back into power, that you're fully right there, Kyle. Like this is a guy who was poised to swing the country in that direction. 100%, yeah.
I think there's also, I think we need to talk about a policy merry-go-round here, which is a country deports immigrants to a third-party location where they have paid for a prison to be constructed. Are we talking about the USA now, the UK with Rwanda, or Australia for so many years? Because that policy came out of Australia. It came out of the Australia of Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd. It came out of the Australia of Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, Scott Morrison. Absolutely, it's the Australia of Peter Dutton. And we often talk about the downstream effects from the US and the UK to Southern Hemisphere things, but that policy is an Australian policy. Stop the boats in the UK, stop the small boats. We've heard that before here. And it was exported, and it has been seen as a winning strategy. What I think is, as you just said, the way leaders are approaching Trump is affecting how they're doing in the eyes of their own people. So Mark Carney still going to go right wing, but hits the nationalist button and just goes, fuck America, we don't need them. Keir Starmer goes, his boots tasted delicious. I had a wonderful time at his party. Do not ask me any questions about what else I had to do. And everyone's gone, ew, what a little freak. And the same with Albo. Albo's gone, well, you can't trust the guy effectively. And Peter Dutton's doing I can be the person who makes a deal with him. And the problem is, I think the majority of voters across all spectrums look at Trump and recoil in horror They see what he is for what he is, rather than seeing him as some sort of geopolitical kind of thing to be taken advantage of. Like, he's a disaster area. You need to get away from him as quickly as possible. And you need to make it clear to your people, you're the kind of person who can do that. You're not going to make a deal with him, because he makes a deal with you, and then 5 seconds later, that odious slug Stephen Miller goes into the room, reverses everything, and also sends a wet team to kill you. This is, so we start with, Trump's policies, aren't they horrendous? Yeah, they were horrendous when Scott Morrison was doing them. They were horrendous when a Labour government was doing them. There is no real difference here. I mean, we kind of, in New Zealand, we've got that thing where we're like, well, at least we don't do that. And it's just because of it's just geography. The only reason we don't have a camp in Fiji or the Cook Islands or somewhere is because it's too fucking far for the boats. And if we did, we'd have exactly the same policies. And Labour would support it. The National Party would support it. New Zealand First would fucking love it. And I think there was it Turnbull who tried to spook us on that when Ardern was in? When we were asking, hey, we can resettle.
Yeah,
those?
it was him. Yeah.
And it might have been, and it was fucking Peter Dutton. It was Dutton going, well, we recently intercepted a steel-hulled ship that could have easily made it to New Zealand. And everyone in New Zealand went, did you know?
Some of them did. And then the Labour Party under Jacinda Ardern had Michael Wood put through a mass arrivals bill.
I remember that well. Michael Wood, too busy focusing on immigrants and not on his share portfolio.
Whoops.
Rookie mistake.
This is the thing, right? It is easy for Australia to lead us along. They're a massive economy. They've got like a lot of projected power into the Pacific. They are consistently trying to start shit with our largest trading partner. Another example of Australian policy, which has had a direct impact on the way that New Zealand policy discussion and politics discourse is created, is the 501 deportations, right? Where Australia's like, no, we're just sending these people back. We're just going to deport them to New Zealand. They never lived there. It doesn't matter. And straight out the back of that came a tough on crime set of policies from both National and the Labour Party, with New Zealand media ready and willing to boost it. It's pretty horrific. Another thing that I've been keeping an eye on, and this is, as I am wont to do sometimes, veering into conspiracy, but we've got a mega prison being built down at Waikeria that we're going to have a lot of trouble filling. I wonder what that could be for in the future if Australia wants to hire some private prison capacity. Yeah. And I just think we have to be very aware of the rather outsized role that Australia is capable of playing with even quite minimal policy changes. Just based on the size of their population, amount of resource available, size of their economy, and really sadly and pathetically for us, their ability to give workers more rights.
I don't think they've ever forgiven us for inadvertently causing something of a constitutional crisis in the parliament due to birthright citizenship, which has to be one of the funniest and most New Zealand ways to undermine Australia ever, in that we didn't know we'd even done it until everybody had to start resigning. And it wasn't just us. There were other countries involved too, but it really was the grandfather came over from New Zealand. Oh, they're legally not allowed to be an MP anymore. I mean, I guess that's the advantages of a written constitution, in that it's very stupid and can trip you up.
I think the other thing that'll be interesting to keep an eye on, and we'll probably talk about a little more as the night progresses, is the role of militarism, and especially across Five Eyes and with the AUKUS treaties, because Australia was all in with the US under Biden, and now with the ascension of Trump, that has cooled off a bit. You have the submarines deal, which it's kind of, I think, disappeared. It's just gone a bit quiet in the last little while. Unsurprisingly. But you've also got the situation where Australia has been gearing itself up against China, somewhat at the behest of the United States, although they've always had problems with that themselves. And now the US is completely rabid, and it puts Australia in a really, I'm just going to say, tough geopolitical position with how it wants to operate. I would like to think that is a lot worse under Dutton. I think it almost certainly is going to be also maybe less effective under Dutton as well, though. And if you have an Australian Labor Party that aligns in that direction, and similarly to how Starmer does in the UK, things are not looking particularly good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of like how we're talking about how Australia is thinking about stuff like Five Eyes and AUKUS and things, and how there's almost like an onflow from the dialogue, like the tariffs dialogue that was created by stuff going wrong with America. I'm pretty sure Albanese has agreed or at least talked about how US measures against Australia would be unjustified and that we should retaliate. I say we, sorry, they should retaliate in that instance. But that there's also willingness to support American measures to counter things like freedom or nations that act with impunity, which is just coded language to say China, right? Especially when articles that refer to these activities talk immediately about live fire drills that China has had in the area. So I do think that you're right in that if it is under Dutton, I think Dutton has already pledged to increase military spending by some immeasurably large proportion of the country's wealth, like 3% maybe, like some insane amount like that, right? So he's got the numbers there. He's prepared to make that pledge. Albanese hasn't really committed to that, I think, but the way that he's been discussing it, I think, shows a softening on his part, even though he was almost seen as and I hate this phrase, the Chinese whisperer a couple of years ago. Like he'd made all these overtures to China, essentially, if you guys remember this, in 2023. He made all these overtures towards China.
Hey, you have the pass, I can't say that.
Talked to President Xi and things like that. So like he was all in on that particular train and on maintaining that relationship. And I think we're really seeing a softening of that stance because of how he's positioned himself in, like, I guess, a Kanye-esque way, like we were all implying before. Like, yes, not really a huge fan of Trump, but I'm a huge fan of protecting Australia's sovereignty or freedom to operate or whatever that means, and against big threats. And I guess the biggest threat to a lot of the Western democracies now, and I say democracy in the loosest way possible, is China. So I think either way, whatever we get, it's going to be, I guess, all war against China phase, really.
Wow, dead air. Something that you never want in a live stream.
Oh, I've got a bit more. It's interesting to look.
They're too powerful.
It's interesting to look at the different positions of, say, the three countries that have had elections this week. Canada obviously have the US as a major trading partner, but are basically under attack from the tariffs regime and have responded in kind. They've had a Conservative Party which was 20 to 30 points ahead and completely ate shit the minute Trump got in. It's a very unique situation that's happening to them, in that Carney has to do this kind of, I'm going to use the word muscular liberalism, but I don't mean it in a good way. He has to do that kind of muscular right-wing thing, because while unlucky Pierre lost his seat this week, he got the best result for the Conservative Party of Canada that they've had since the 1980s. That 40% they pulled in was huge. The fact he lost his seat is just hilarious, and they still didn't win. But it was the biggest result ever. So obviously Carney's like, shit, I need to pull some of those guys back in. And the Liberals' vote in Canada was mostly boosted by the fact that the kind of the left-wing parties kind of semi-collapsed. Like the voters ran back to the Liberals to shore them up because they really didn't like the idea of the Conservatives getting in again. Now, in the UK, with Trump in particular, they are desperate for that trade agreement with the US because about 9 years ago, they voted to cut themselves off from their largest trading partner. And now they are, to put it bluntly, fucked. And they have to find somebody to dance with, and nobody wants to dance with them anymore. And obviously, they've got first past the post, which is an absolute nightmare in itself. especially because it's broken. The two-party system is now at least a three-party system, maybe a four-party system. So, and Starmer, having defeated the Conservatives last year in a landslide caused by the vote on the right splitting neatly into two pieces, is now having to tack further right to try and attempt to appeal to both Conservative voters as the party finally dies, and the rise of Reform, who, I've said this off air, but it appears that Keir Starmer and the UK establishment are attempting to create New Zealand first using Nigel Farage as Winston Peters. They are a right-wing anti-immigration party who look like their economic platform is going to be something close to kind of that national socialism. Yeah, but not that kind, but maybe not. Okay, so we've got like those two situations there are very different for the respective Labour parties or Liberal parties in their country. Here we've got a weird thing, and I said it at the beginning. Peter Dutton is the appendix of the 9-year coalition rule in Australia. He's the bit that nobody really wanted and nobody likes him, but he's there. And until he's gone, that party doesn't move on. This election is how to get rid of him. Whereas I don't think there may be the same pressures to head as rightward in Australia if the Australian Labour Party make gains as the YouTube MRP poll predicted they would. It said they're going to actually increase their majority. And from some of the numbers I'm seeing down on the screen that I've got down here, the early votes, and it's very early, show that there isn't a swing against Labour. There's a swing against the opposition. If that's a sign from the electorate, keep doing what you're doing, maybe that's an insurance against some of their worst right-wing demons kind of getting control of the party.
Although it also looks like Pauline Hanson's party might have a swing towards them as well. So
don't even get me started on One Nation. Like, just some of the most horrific curse writings I've seen in my entire lifetime. Like, I think it's so bizarre to me that I think I said this before, again, off stream. I don't know why I say all my good bits for when I'm not actually live and have to be intelligent.
So you can say them again with the caveat.
So I can repeat them, right?
Live,
yeah, exactly. But it's one of those things where I called Pauline Hanson, I think, a politician for the internet age, the Vine age, because she's just one of the most odious, offensive people I've ever considered in my life. But she's just so eminently filmable and capturable. Like, she almost talks in 6-second xenophobic sound bites, right, at this point. Like wanting to make Australia white again, for example, which I'm sure we all know her for. And also has stunts in Parliament way back in the day, wearing a burqa and yelling incoherently and things like that. So it's, I don't want to say I feel like we're swinging back in that direction when it comes to, I guess, how politicians should behave. But I think if we look, for example, the reaction we've had in New Zealand to our own disruption of Parliament, like in very positive ways, I think people are realizing, and almost the public and people like Luxon and his ill-made selfie videos in the back of the car about public policy. There's a real drive, I think, to try and appeal to a younger voter, a digital voter, and I guess they see the internet and they see behavior like that as ways to do so. And so someone like Pauline Hanson, who thrives off controversy and just being, don't want to call her a C word, it feels misogynistic, but being a bit of a shit, and the general trend towards right-wing politicians using social media like a cudgel almost to air out the most repulsive views possible, thanks to advice from Topham Guerin, the world's most overpriced and challenged consultants. I can only imagine that she's got one of their minions in her basement there at One Nation, trying to tell her how to make these viral videos about her being a racist happen. So,
yeah, I do want to make a quick note on language there. We're doing the Australian election. I don't think it's misogynistic. I think it would have been complimentary.
So I think shit cunt is gender neutral, to my understanding, but I'm open to be corrected on that.
Yeah, gender neutral, like Margaret Thatcher's grave, right? It's a
Right.
gender neutral toilet, that sort of situation.
That's
I think
increasingly legislation in the United Kingdom is forcing every trans person on that island to go to the toilet on Margaret Thatcher's grave.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good that New Zealand is committed to gender-neutral toilets, for instance. Sir Bob Jones donated one this week.
That's right. And in lieu of gifts, the family does ask that you piss and shit on his grave.
Oh no.
How close is that to libeling the family?
It's not.
Yeah.
I,
We're gonna
This is
do a
clearly in a
minute
matter of
silence.
opinion.
Yeah. God. So much for the minute of silence we were gonna have for
No,
him.
I do think
How was that dead air?
well, he would want a minute of punching a reporter in the face, I think.
Holy shit.
no one. No, I was going to say no one did it better. Many people did. Let's be honest. But
Many
moving
people
on
did do
from
it
the New
better.
Zealand
It's
situation.
no, I think just to touch on something that was said a little bit earlier. I think John said this, that the United Kingdom is sort of becoming one where the party system is changing. I would characterize it almost, looking at the polls, as an incipient one-party state. Reform is caning Labour in the polls, and the Conservatives are becoming a mere shadow. And so there is a real risk of, at least if that continues, and based on what Starmer's political instincts are, it will continue, of a reform landslide. And that's, as bad as it is now, it's a terrifying prospect. And I think there is a widespread belief, and we really don't have to get into this because I'm sure it's been done so many times in 1 or 200, that the idea is that if a right-wing party is successful, the Labour Party has to run to follow them. But we know that's not true. Starmer doesn't have to do that. It's a political choice to do that. All of them, Reeves, Starmer, West Streeting, appear to be in a fight to somehow be the worst person on earth. And it's astonishing and difficult to understand how, why, or what on earth they're doing. And I know this isn't the UK election, so we shouldn't talk about it too much, but that it seems every week that they have unleashed a fresh new horror and Blairism.
Yeah, it's another one of those kind of data points around the ostensible parties of capital, right? Like the two major parties are looking to consolidate more and more, at least in terms of what policy they're all running, forcing the more right-wing party out to the far right, and allowing these, what do you call it? Like economic populist parties to like swoop in. I mean, Trump did the same, right? It's all lies, of course. These are still this is a third party of capital in the case of reform. But even here in New Zealand, there's regularly talk, and increasingly so, about the possibility of a grand coalition, which is just a wild thing to be talking about if you're within the political opinion class. And yet there is this kind of nascent understanding that Labour and National are much, much closer to each other in terms of outcomes and desires than people who are outright fascists, or people that want to tax the rich a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, the stats I saw were like reform voters favour nationalising public utilities. Reform voters believe in protecting British industries. Reform voters believe that big business does not pay enough tax. These reform voters are voting essentially for what would have been called a Labour platform not too long ago. Well, I say not too long ago, 40 years. Or between 2015 and 2019, but we're not allowed to talk about that anymore.
Yes, the 2017 manifesto, in other words.
It's pretty much that's kind of what they're looking for, and they're like, reform voters favour those things more than kind of the general public do. But the thing is, when reform are ahead in the polls, that means the general public actually think that. However, I saw that Keir Starmer's response is to announce further immigration crackdowns, because if you just punish the desperate people enough, then voters who have lost everything due to austerity, have had their communities atomized over decades, will finally like you.
I don't want to misquote or anything, but wasn't there a story which almost literally word for word said, "Are we going to give them conservative light or reform light?" Like that was the strategy, which is an inversion of the joke that everybody says on Twitter about, if you give them right-wing light party, why wouldn't they just vote for the right-wing party? Astonishingly, they seem to be taking that as advice rather than as a kind of satirical pointing out of the failures of Blairism. And I mean, I think they're running the ship into the ground because they know that there will be plum NGO positions, but I'm starting to doubt that there will be. I don't think the UK will have enough money to go around then, It's hard to say.
It was fun to see the UK Labour Party have a fight with Tony Blair this week in the media after the Tony Blair Institute, brought to you by Azerbaijan, did a report about how net zero is actually impossible and they should probably cut that stuff out because it's really bad. And Tony Blair was rebuked by the Labour Party, which is like, you're too radical for us, Tony. We need to do what we're doing. Can you stop making your rare interventions every 3 months?
ID cards, Neom, and a dream.
Everyone just hurtles back through time in concert.
God, that was grim.
We've got results, don't we, Kyle?
Yes, we do. Let's have a look at Central Australia, was it?
We will hopefully.
Oh, never mind. Sorry. The studio's telling me that we don't actually have Central Australian results in at the moment.
No, there are no final results at the moment.
Look, I'm quite enjoying that. Like, I feel like I'm working at NZME, but
I do like that you can put your finger to your ear and say, "No, I'm getting news, and it's true. You're not making a joke."
Yeah, I'm hearing word from our Australian correspondent on the ground, essentially.
Yeah, we're not actually seeing...
to thank our technical sponsor today, Palantir.
We're actually seeing that many results out just yet. Counter to what Jenny was saying, but I think one of the interesting things to consider is how does Australia match up to these kind of leading lights of the West in the UK, right? Because I think it is a significantly different state of affairs. For one thing, Australian workers have some much better protections and have a better machine than those in the UK at this point, and in a lot of regards. They've got a much more institutionalized, I think you say, or organized opposition with the Australian Greens. They have a lot more, as we've seen over the last week or so, media who are happy to just take a crack at people. There's this really fun you shared with me, John, I think earlier today or yesterday, where they had Dutton on, and we're just basically saying, "Why are you so shit, mate?"
It's a fantastic intro. It's like, your campaign is flailing. Your bus keeps crashing into people. Everybody hates your nuclear policy. Peter Dutton, why is your campaign going so badly? And that was the opening question. And you're like, you can't imagine Jack Tame given that kind of treatment.
No.
I mean, you probably could have got it from Mary on RNZ back in the day. Back, maybe Kim if she was really in the mood. But it's they've also got, obviously, state level stuff, which has its own thing going on there as well. They have a lot more localized government and protections that come in there. So you do have these situations where you have the federal government says one thing and the states go, "No, we're not going to do that. Fuck you." And that's kind of healthy to have that as a constitutional way to fight back against any kind of overreach in some ways. But it does, the numbers that are coming up here, they don't look good for the coalition getting back in. And it's really early days, but it looks like a swing against them. It looks like a minor increase for the Greens and a bit of a swing for Labour. And Pauline Hanson's lot are gonna pick up some votes, but like, is that because the Liberal National Party are too woke? Question mark.
One of the really interesting things, and as we came towards the end of the Australian election campaign, is that consistently during the campaign, Peter Dutton was getting increasingly nasty, and trying to go much further right and become much more aggressive, attacking Albanese and the Labour Party around things like Israel. Basically saying, you're not pro-Israel enough, you're not pro-US enough, getting up to all kinds of garbage. And then I think in the last week started putting out stories about how he has a softer side, because they realized, oh wait a fucking minute, I think I overshot here.
Well, they periodically would do that. Peter Dutton shows his softer side with a story, every 3 or 4 weeks.
My husband's not a monster, I think, was the headline. My favorite Peter Dutton headline is the picture of him. He's kind of standing, his wife is sitting in front of him, and my Peter's not a monster is the headline above them. And the only vibe you get from the photo is enemies to lovers, Frankenstein.
My husband is not a monster t-shirt has a lot of people asking questions already answered by my t-shirt.
By my husband.
Listen, she just wants to push back against allegations that she's a monster fucker, and I understand. I've been there.
He just looks, I just can't, every time they come up with a headline like that, I just have to look at his face and I just go, he looks like a taxidermied human.
I'm just imagining Monster Musume with Peter Dutton in it.
Please don't do that.
Don't.
Please absolutely don't do that.
Yeah.
Now you've done that to all of us on the live stream now.
Except for John, who blessedly doesn't understand.
Yeah, it's just, I know that we say this once in a while about him and that, people try and humanize him, but it's just, I just think that it's almost like too little too late, right, at this point. Like, his rhetoric around Israel has been so entrenched. And it's not just that he looks weird. Like, he looks like a turnip was given sentience. But it's not just about that. It's about how he's had this long-standing and said, honestly, some of the most vile stuff around the Gaza-Palestine issue, right? And that, despite what politicians think in Australia and what government officials think, like, that's a thing that anyone with any basic amount of empathy is going to come down the side of Palestine for. And the fact that he committed so publicly to wanting to do security checks for people from Gaza who are coming in. Sorry, and wanting to put, I think, questions about anti-Semitism and citizenship tests. Like, that's the rationale of someone who is just deeply, deeply deranged. And I think, going back to my point from before about all the comparisons he's made about how he's similar to Trump, he speaks Trump's language, there's the same kind of people, I think these things are really just only going to hurt him. And I think we've seen that really right now. Like, we've seen the results of that kind of live right now during this election night. Yeah,
we talk about the way in which major party leaders are surrounded by a cohort that kind of tells them what they want to hear, right? If you're a 1 of 200 follower, you have heard us say this about Chris Hipkins quite a bit. Same goes for Luxon as well. Same goes for someone like Albanese, right? Like specifically around his pro-Israel stance, and also for that of his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Penny Wong, who have been just absolutely woeful. I say woeful. They're complicit in genocide. Both of them, their entire government, despite, like most of the Western world, this completely opposite stance. These political cohorts are being actively sheltered from their electorates, and alongside being outright Zionists themselves, are also being told it's not going to affect their electoral hopes at all, or that they need to be more extreme. But the advisors around Dutton must just be fucking mad. I genuinely don't understand. Like, even in Canada, like, Polyev was trying to take a liberal line, right? In New Zealand, Luxon was trying to do working class policies. This is what they were pretending to. In Australia, Dutton is just like, I'm going to fuck you all up. Like, I fucking hate you all. We're gonna destroy everything, kill everybody, and I genuinely don't know what's happening.
I think I'm just getting word that we may be going to a break after this, which might be a good time after the break to discuss the entirely successful and wholly popular Peter Dutton wants to build 7 nuclear power stations policy.
This is the shit I mean.
That's incredible, John. I was also just getting word of that. I don't know how, but perhaps we're psychically connected.
It's the left echo chamber of
That's right.
woke groupthink.
All right, we're gonna take
We're
a
going to
break.
What Cafe. We'll be back.
It'll be about 5 minutes, and drop some questions in the chat, and we'll get to them when we return.
Yeah, the doctor said it'd clear up if I stopped picking it.
And we're back. We're back.
We are back.
So what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about Peter Dutton's build 7 nuclear power plants policy,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
immediately crashed and burned.
Which is very bad for a nuclear power plant. When they do that, they're in distress. But it was, he announced 7 nuclear power plants, announced the locations, and then refused to visit any of them on the election campaign. And then was pursued by anti-nuclear campaigners. And there was some polling that came out earlier this week, which said that 51% of his own supporters agree with the nuclear policy. So almost half of his own supporters don't think it's a good idea. And the thing is, like, I'm about to take the traditional 1 of 200 Philip position.
The centrist position. Okay, yeah.
You've got to hand it to Dutton. He does realize that they do have an energy crisis and that coal and gas is not the future. It's just he's kind of come up with the stupid option, which befits his role as a stupid man, you know. But it is he can see that there's a problem, and it's nice for the coalition to actually accept there is an energy crisis that needs to be solved, because their policies previously have been dig more coal, burn more oil, and that's a change. It's just the change they made would make sense as long as everyone in Australia actually liked it, which they never have. And I believe there's no nuclear power stations in Australia. There's a ban on them. So he would like to reverse a long-standing thing and suddenly put loads of nuclear power stations everywhere, which I'm sure wouldn't have any problems with Indigenous Australians or anything else like that, you know. But it's a radical idea, but it's radical in all of the really bad ways at once. While intention good, energy crisis, clean power somehow, in execution, he probably should be. Yes.
Yeah.
Coal and gas, not the future. That's anti-Australian talk. Listen, this is the lucky country. You can't dispute that. That's all we're going to be doing from now on. Coal today, coal tomorrow, coal 1,000 years from now, mate.
There's a reason it's in the ground. It can be dug up.
Listen, if God didn't want us to dig it up, why did he give us shovels for hands?
If God didn't want us to dig up coal, he wouldn't have invented Gina Reinhardt.
The only thing I'm not just going to be mining your wife's pussy, okay? There's rocks down there.
Dear God.
Well, this is what I mean about the
exit traveled through about 3 different regions, I think.
Yeah, it was horrific in so many different ways. Well done. But again, it comes back to who is advising these people, right? Like, who came up with this policy?
Topham Guerin, we've already been over this. It's obviously people like Topham Guerin. Like,
I like to think that these brainworms have like traveled to Australia and are whispering in his neurons.
Did we get have we covered what the campaign slogan was for the coalition?
Take it away.
Get Australia back on track.
Oh no.
No, it was exactly the fucking same as what we had over here a few years ago. It was exactly the same. And I mean, it was get Australia back on track. And I was just like, fucking Topham Guerin being like, Control C?
Yeah, literally.
That'll be $2 million.
Higher Jenny.
No. Please, if you're a conservative politician, do not hire me.
Interrupt here as I'm getting news from my phone down here. Early swing against Peter Dutton in Dixon.
Oh shit!
If we see 2 Western right-wing opposition leaders lose their seats within a week, that's, you know, I'm just taking every win I can get. Essentially, I'm very happy with that. I hope he feels horrific.
It's some kind of a win, I guess. Like, it's not going to stop the fact that we're probably going to have a Butlerian jihad in Australia in like 50 years from now. But, you know, I guess a win is a win. Yeah, a win is a win. Sure.
I mean, say what you will, but with the help of Topham Guerin, I think that Peter Dutton can win Epsom. All he needs is what was it? The PP tapes? I don't know. Whatever that was.
Yeah. Lord.
Tapes. Okay, I'm mixing them up.
Little bit. I think this is a thing as well, which has been on my mind, sort of related in terms of how I guess we're going to deal with the primary industries of Australia's future, right? Like, obviously, we're looking at the issues that I think Canada was facing, things like the dairy industry, agriculture, and whatnot. Like, yes, all very pressing concerns for the government, both incoming and as potentially outgoing. But I wanted to think a little bit and maybe discuss a little bit as well the massive investment in infrastructure that Australia has had from a tech perspective recently. I'm talking about $1 billion deal with a Silicon Valley firm to build a quantum computer. Where, you ask? Brisbane. I didn't know that we had people capable of operating quantum computers in Brisbane, but that's where they're going to build. Yeah, that's where they're going to build that shit.
They have more forklift operators per capita, Jenny.
I thought Australia had
they're going to have the Olympics.
20-something% of the.
Yeah, so we have, for some
computing?
reason, we have a really, really big population of the world's quantum computing scientists, which to me is bizarre. Like, something about Australia just produces a bunch of really smart people that go on to potentially use intelligence for evil. But I think a curious comment that I heard, or Albanese was floating around the time of this investment choice, was that his government wanted Australia to become, I'm quoting directly here, a center for quantum growth for the rest of the planet. Which to me just sounds so incredibly ominous, right?
Sounds
like,
so evil, eh?
It sounds so evil. You've let a Silicon Valley firm into the country to come up with this computer. And I was at a venture capital festival recently. I know three of the worst words in existence.
Some jokes just write themselves.
And look,
Was that the one where Kneecap played?
I just want to be so clear to everyone here that I didn't come up with that terminology. I didn't look at this gathering of folk and go, that's what I'm going to call it. It is called a venture capital festival. And it was happening in Sydney, again, very, very cursed place over the last week. And they had a founder speak from this quantum chip computing company, who I would say had probably some of the best media training I've ever seen anyone ever have. And whoever trained him should train Australian politicians because they desperately need that shit. But when asked basically how he determined which entities should use a quantum computer, and when asked outright about whether or not defense would ever have any access to it, he gracefully dodged the question by saying that he'd love to apply this technology to the needs of Australia as and when they came up, agnostic of the Department of Defense's assistance putting this computer together. So all that says to me is that we're going to get a big computer in Brisbane that will be operational maybe in about 2 years. That's their kind of ideal timeline. And then we're going to start like Palantir striking people that disagree with us in the West. Or maybe they'll nuke Uluru. I don't know what they're going to do. But they talked about reshaping the Australian landscape, which to me felt, again, very ominous after that prolonged conversation. So
we're going to do fallout in Australia.
Like, truly, right? And I feel like there's almost been, I think, no pushback at all virtually across any of the parties on this investment. Like, they're all fully into this deal. Like, they've signed this contract 2 to 5 years, with this particular company. And we're basically going to see, I think, Australia turn into either a hub to create more of these quantum chips for the APAC area. And given that we now have so many military bases in Australia, I think it's quite a dangerous connection. Right? Like, people are just not we have 4 US military bases now in Australia. That's 4 huge bases and expanded presence. And Aussie wants to expand their Navy as well and host more US ships. So what does that mean in concert with this collaboration with a quantum computing firm? Like, all I can see is a drain on natural resources in Australia, a drain on power, which is a huge thing for the country right now at the moment. For what goal? To become like an American drone strike targeting system in the next 2 years or so? Like, there's not been enough commentary on it at all.
Yes. Is the answer to that. And still kind of get offshore chip, right? Like, as they try and encircle China both economically and militarily. Again, I'm not sure how this plays out given the way that Trump is flailing around, right? Like, they've had to resolve from that to a large extent. I don't know how they're going to run a whole bunch of quantum computers in Brisbane given how hot it is. Is there a cooling solution for this? It could be the worst idea they've come up with something that's really interesting to me is
They had a football World Cup in Qatar. Like,
okay, yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean that. Yeah, sure. That's the Qatar Cup. That's the health and safety benchmark we all should be meeting right on these programs. Like that's what we should be doing.
say what you will about
Like,
these World Cup bids, but I heard that in a few years it's going to be hosted by Palantir at Little St James.
It's going to Saudi Arabia, which is just as bad, I guess. I mean, one of the most interesting, like the degrading geopolitical climate, the end of American leadership in the West, the idea that Trump, über alles, like forever, is fascinating in some ways. Because if you build a quantum computer in Brisbane, and America continues to back down on kind of its role as the policeman of the world, which is horrible and brutal and awful. I can't help but think you're just effectively building a nice quantum computer for China eventually. Like, and I don't mean that in a Paula Penfold, I'm scared of the Chinese people. The police
Good
went to
disclaimer,
China.
good to
The
know.
police went to China and saw it, and there were a lot of red flags. I'm like, yes, that's their flag. It's what it fucking looks like. It's meant to be red. There are some stars in the corner and stuff. It's a whole thing. But this kind of, oh, we're going to build this because then America will like us, and I'm just like, it's. I have said this on socials recently, and I'm just like, if you've seen Chernobyl, you know the bit where the firefighters pick up spicy rock. And then they start to get sick, and then they go through the Walking Dead phase of acute radiation poisoning, where you seem to improve while all of your bone marrow dies, and then you become jelly. I was like, that's America. It's like Trump is spicy rock. This idea that there will be a future American leadership in the way that there has been is like saying, no, don't worry about it. Just have some turmeric and practice mindfulness, and it'll be fine. It's crazy.
Steve Jobs.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
It worked for Steve Jobs, I said.
It did. He ate a lot of fruit, and he turned into Ashton Kutcher. I mean, you know,
an incredible move.
But again, it's this. We're going to do this because we're going to work with these American firms and stuff. And I'm just like, cool. Is there going to be an America left at this point?
This is the thing, right? Like, it's either the US goes on some kind of post-hegemonic rampage, and which has kind of already begun, like right out the gate in the first 100 days of the Trump presidency, such as it is, or it turns in on itself, which is almost certainly going to be starting to do within the next 100 days. And then it's like, okay, like where are you getting your US interoperability from at this point? Like the rogue US Department of Defense that is somehow separate from the White House? Maybe, like from a range of private military entities, perhaps. Like, and a really interesting parallel with, you know, this $1 billion investment in Australia from Tech Capital. Was that Chris Hipkins started to do the same in 2023, right off the back of Ardern working with BlackRock. This is a concerted international campaign to try and use this stuff to, it seems like, get governments under the thumb of Tech Capital. Like, we're going to offer you this this huge amount of investment. You're going to be able to make heaps of jobs. You're going to, like, you know, tech is the future in your country now. I guess the difference is that Hipkins just fucking fumbled it.
Well, there's a very good chance that that we could be New Zealand. I mean, the investment conference that Luxon called was not what he. It could be good for New Zealand investment, but not the way Luxon thinks, as capital literally flees the United States. You know, the treasury bonds thing we've seen recently and how that works is like capital flight, it turns out, is real, but it's when the right wing go too far. We were always told that capital flight would only happen if you taxed people about the same as they were taxed about 35 years ago, because back then nothing worked properly like public services. So, you know, capital flight's happening. Unfortunately, it's concentrated in the hands of like Peter Thiel and his blood boys and all the various other, you know, it's fucking Immortan Joe shit that's happening now, which is good because this is an Australian election and Mad Max is set in Australia. Like George Miller, great Australian, saw this coming. You know, we are all going to have to decide which kind of gigantic war machine we will have to like drive over the ruins of Wellington in a few years' time.
Unfortunately, in the New Zealand context, we have no
Modern science
manufacturing.
people think about it.
We can't even make cars. What kind of war machine are we going to make?
I think I'm sort of thinking back to what Jenny had said a little earlier about Butlerian jihad, and
yeah, bring it back to the Butlerian jihad.
The quantum computing, and I think that people might not be old enough to remember. I say as though I'm not like approximately 13 to 14 years old. That there was once a computer, just one, being constructed in Whanganui here, and it was the computer, and there was a huge uproar against it, and people thought that it was going to end the world, and it did. And I think we need to have that energy back again. I think we need to destroy the computer.
How do you find the right one to destroy, though? That's the problem now. They've got so many duds.
Kyle, that's the beautiful thing, and I'm so glad that you asked. That is a great question. It's all of them. It's all of the computer.
They're all one computer now because of the Internet of Things, right?
Yeah, because of Skynet. They're all actually one hive mind. Like, if you thought the liberal woke hive mind was dangerous,
Peter Thiel looks at every single science fiction story and says, how do I make that? They are only being stopped by how little capital America, like by the fact that everything is fleeing the dollar. That is the only thing that is saving us right now.
We are. We're also. I'm seeing a headline: early swing towards Labour across the country. Oh dear. But it's also, we do have to update. Frank Herbert was writing in the 50s and 60s when he came up with the Butlerian jihad. Obviously, we are far more advanced and flexible, which is why we're going to have the Judith Butlerian jihad, where we destroy all the computers and get trans rights at the same time. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to put statues of Auntie Judith up around the world.
Win some, lose most. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because China seems to be pulling ahead in all of the information technology anyway. I mean, there was just, I don't know whether this is going to be feasible as a mass producible technology yet, but scientists have, there was a headline that they'd recently just they'd managed to mechanically construct a new kind of storage which will make effectively any sort of other, RAM, hard drive, any other kind of storage obsolete because it outperforms all of them by about 10,000 times in terms of speed, in terms of its ability to retain information, just blows everything out of the water. So it's anybody's guess as to whether or not it's even going to matter, because it seems to me, and I think you'll have a much better idea of this as a person of startups, Jenny, that the way that it works.
That was just the most the biggest deep cut against me there.
A POS,
to be. Why didn't you have this energy for Pauline Hanson? Like, why weren't you on her back?
Never heard one of your face. When you said Pauline Hanson calling, I thought you were meaning as in you have her on speed dial, because she is she's not your type. Is all I'll say.
I'm taking so much heat right now. What the
It's
fuck?
Jenny roast time.
I'm trying to make a serious point, and you keep making these jokes, and I'm not certain that this is tenable. So to get us back on track,
startup world, yes, the world I'm reluctantly a part of.
My perception of the way that the quote-unquote tech world works is that it's a series of multi-level marketing schemes, like B2B, SaaS, all of this is a series of interlocking marketing schemes where people are trying to con each other and then simultaneously believing in the hallucination together. I'm not certain what technological advances are actually involved in any of them. I have a brother who is a systems analyst and gets paid about double in Australia what he was getting paid in New Zealand. And I can't understand what his job does, which doesn't mean that he's not doing anything. But I understand all the underlying components to it. It just sounds like a lot of it is, let's say, more playing
street magic, like keep away cups, than it is actually doing anything significant with technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard this comment once from a startup founder. Again, God, I hate that I've just said that as a sentence. But I spoke to someone essentially who likened the way that startups work to being like a network of language learning machines. And his point was trying to make it seem like, oh, it's ecosystems that learn from each other, right? And that as you feed information from one B2B SaaS business to another, ostensibly both will get better because of exposure to information and information sharing and things like that. But really, I mean, I agree with one point. I agree that it is a bit like LLMs because it's basically about hallucinating information all the time, right? Like it's doing what a language learning model does, which is see someone's lens on the world and then willfully misinterprets it, essentially. Like startups, I think there are some which make sense, I suppose, as a service. There are some which I think genuinely are useful to the population. Then there are others like Brian Johnson's, right? Which is a Theranos style, I'm going to take your blood and tell you that you're going to get dementia at 20 years old. Like just things like that, you know? And there are so many more of those Brian Johnson, biohacking, biomarking, insights analysis, QA testing, like just a jumble of bunch words that really exist. And I think the one thing which the startup industry doesn't potentially think enough about is how much of its power and its influence derives from its American origins. Like one thing that I think we don't talk enough about is the startup world and Silicon Valley and those companies only being so powerful and having, I guess, the influence they have because they're run by Immortan Joe, right? They're run by Peter Thiel and the lads and men who just never want to die and say they never want to die. But if America's power, I guess, in the New World Order is disrupted, then I think we're going to see a serious reevaluation of access to resources to create these startups. A lot of the time, a cost-effective startup is only so because they keep costs low by operating in China or in India or in Eastern Europe, for example. And when that's no longer tenable because of things like tariffs, because of things like changing workers' rights and labor laws, then I think we're going to see a real shift in, I guess, the fluffy, feel nice startups like, I don't know, marketing insights and data analytics. I'm going to see a really hard pivot into ones that have direct impact on things like Simone was saying, like semiconductor resources, right? Like on these real hardline companies and businesses that are in the I guess in the business of churning out technological advancement, like quite materially. So that would be weird to see, I guess. Like if China is a new world power, what does that mean for startups as an ecosystem? Like, will we have a Chinese Brian Johnson? So I guess we have Chinese Elon Musk impersonators, but like I think theoretically and I guess culturally, I think the Silicon Valley drive, the thing that creates a startup like Brian Johnson, is not really present in the Chinese capitalist or Chinese Communist Republic ecosystem at all. So
this is the thing, though, right? Like you're talking about capital flight, and they bring that culture with them as well. As they flee the US, they move into these smaller jurisdictions. New Zealand being one of them. Was it just last year or the beginning of this year that Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz had a essentially secret meeting with Christopher Luxon to talk about something that we don't have any access to. And so even in the case that the US political culture isn't being as dominating, or in fact, countries like Australia or Canada or New Zealand are pushing back on what's happening under Trump, those corporate ties still exist. And in fact, with some of those people offshoring to these second homes, to these other colonial outposts, they bring a lot of that stuff with them as well. And so even without the direct political interference or political pressure, and to be clear, this has also been happening for 50 years with tech in particular. But we might see an acceleration of that. So we could see this quantum computing stuff become like a core plank of Australian politics, which is also terrifying to think of.
Yeah, I'm thinking now about what Rocket Lab said earlier in the year after they won that huge deal about and talked about how they would recommence launching satellites from Mahia Peninsula. I think they said that they were, direct quoting here, ready to serve the US Department of Defense. So, I mean, that's all that really that's all that is, right? That's all that really is there, is that a New York listed New Zealand innovative company is involved in these comprehensive design reviews for, I think now, over 18 military satellites and something like a contract with the US government, and also for warfighter architecture that's worth almost $900 million, right? Like Rocket Lab now is a prime defense contractor in the US, and they're launching satellites for the express purpose from New Zealand. So, as you say, I think we are already well complicit now as like a outer or a smaller sister state of colonialism. And I can't imagine that there's a world where if Australia had to reevaluate its connections with New Zealand, and also, I guess, as you say, being our biggest threat geopolitically in the area, like that they wouldn't be wanting to make a play for that kind of connection, right? Or to have a contract that runs through Rocket Lab, DoD, and then by an extension, I guess, using its quantum computing advancement and technology from Brisbane. Like we're geographically perfect for what they want to do. And it isn't going to be just to observe the Earth, as Rocket Lab used to say, that they would have constellations of satellites that just look at the Earth. Like, I think they said that 2 years ago, and then 6 months ago said that it was now going to make those satellites for Earth observation compatible with military networks. Like, that's it, right? Like, the writing's on the wall there. They're saying the quiet part out loud. So I think we are right to be worried that if, no matter how things swing in this election, things like the quantum computing contract are going to be a really big problem for us to consider geopolitically as a smaller country next to Australia.
I want to swing back to the Australian geopolitical threat to New Zealand. It is looking like the ALP are going to win this one. Early indications seem to be relatively strong. I said at the outset that it's not so much some of this corporate or military stuff that makes Australia a threat. It's the economic weight that they have and the pull they have in our current context, where we have a government that is just absolutely destroying our economy, destroying infrastructure, destroying public services, making people redundant left, right, and center, driving down wages. And one thing that the Australian Labor Party has been relatively successful at, since COVID came along, is investing and keeping wages relatively high, building more infrastructure, and ensuring that Australian workers, relative to a lot of I think even other Western countries, and especially relative to us, have a pretty decent livelihood. We've seen huge immigration to Australia from New Zealand, particularly around public services like health and education, in the construction sector as well, and engineering. You were saying before, Simone, that was it your brother earns twice what he could in New Zealand, working over in Australia. What happens in a situation where New Zealand continues to drive our economy down, continues to ensure that our nurses and doctors can't get paid well enough, our teachers can't get paid well enough, and you've just got Australia over the ditch, paying 20, 30K more to people starting in the industry?
I mean, we may see a breakdown of the easy citizenry immigration relationship that Australia and New Zealand have if there is any sort of protection, right? Like there may be a backlash to that. I think it's extremely unlikely at this stage, but that could be conceivable, couldn't it? Because they don't want to raise wages here. Instead, the solution would be punishment of people. And we already do see that to a soft extent, in the sense that if you study in New Zealand, you get interest on your student loan if you go overseas. But we still have such an advantageous relationship with respect to immigration, all of that, that I think it's just easy for people to do that. They might make it harder, and that could be seen as a solution. That's I think the more serious answer. But I also had a bit based on what Jenny was saying, which was immortan Joe Biden.
That's such an out of date bit. I'm sorry.
Do not become addicted to Jack. Its absence was. What was I saying?
Listen, Jack, witness me. I can't die.
I was also thinking actually about what Jenny said about drones and stuff, because obviously recently Chris Luxon went to the UK. Him and Keir Starmer went, "Hey, $30 million in New Zealand drones are going to the UK," and everyone was like, "Fuck, that's military purposes." And it's Jenny, and the discussion here has been about military purpose. The United States is the biggest military force in the world. Blah 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 blah. But I realize that the UK is so fucking small time that it's something really, really banal. That was one of Keir Starmer's tweets ahead of the local elections, and he goes, "Fly tippers, we are going to find you, and you will be punished. We will use drones to track you, and then we will crush your cars." And I was just like, "Fuck, that's what our drones are going to do. Our drones are not going to be used to bomb a wedding in Iran. Our drones are going to be used to follow a guy in a Ford Pinto who has just put 2 bags of rubbish next to a park bench and tried to drive off. And then a drone strike will take his car out before a Serco vehicle comes along, crushes it into a cube, and then leaves it in exactly the same place as the fly tipping." That's Britain. That is exactly where England is right now, with the millions of dollars of drone technology will stop your neighbor from putting their bins out on the wrong day.
And then that drone will be used to deliver Pizza Hut. Or, I'm sorry, Pizza Express from Woking. I do think, yeah. So one of the distinctions, I think, between the United States or perhaps and China, or perhaps we might say the fallacy of startup culture, is this idea that if you have a small group of libertarians in a room, that they're going to do anything except for share child porn. No, sorry. That if you have a small group of libertarians in a room, that they're going to be innovative with respect to anything except for child porn. Okay, let me retake that. If you have a group of libertarians, of hebephiles in a room, one more try. If you have a group of libertarians in a room, that they're going to be innovative with themselves and each other. But if you look at technological advancement, every major leap forward the United States made when it dominated the 20th century was through public funding. It was through university research, and every single big corporation like Rand would farm out all of its risk to the public system. And even if it was done in-house, it would be subsidized by the government. And I think, SpaceX does that, although it does a very poor job of it, largely because of the libertarian at its head. But what's not really understood is that the reason why China is able to do all of this is because it has streamlined what the United States did that allowed it to be so dominant in the post-war period, other than having not been destroyed by a series of world wars on its own shores. And that is that it had public investment and public infrastructure and public risk-taking. But China has taken out the middleman and is not farming it out to the Rand Corporation. It's simply doing it through public research. And then the advancements of those can be taken by the private market as it exists within a kind of, state capitalist social democracy, right? So startups are fallacious on their face because that's not how advancement happens. It never has been, it can't be, and it won't be. And there's nothing inherently innovative about competition. In fact, it's resource wasting when it comes to technological advancement. It's the commons that does that.
It's interesting you've just mentioned libertarians, and the seat of groom has just come up on the bar below us.
Right. That's
like-
what we like to call. So I'm hearing right now that there's some groom going on.
Like you said, when there's a group of
Probably
libertarians in
shouldn't
a
call them
room who's
groom while
watching
I'm
their
doing
girlfriend,
this, but you know.
it is. I mean, there's also the other argument there, which is, yeah, every major advancement the US made in the mid 20th century was a result of farming out public sector money and public sector things. It was also because they were shit scared of the Soviets,
Yes.
and China's performed a fantastic ideological and kind of superpower victory here by being the place where America gets all its treats made. And so this kind of idea, like Trump kind of wants a Cold War type thing with China, except China's where all the stuff that Trump needs gets made. So we can't deal with that. And meanwhile, countries like Australia and New Zealand are sat around the edges watching these two going, look, if it comes down to it, we know it's probably going to be China. They are more reliable. They make more stuff. They're bigger markets for us in many different ways. But we're not allowed to say that yet until America finally dies, which, you know, any day now.
Back to the economic arguments off the back of that interesting segue from Simone. Do we think there's going to be a significant change in the relationship? You know, whether that's to do with a shift away from the US, whether it is a realization that, you know, a public realization that China is our biggest market. Is Australia going to play a key part in that as well? Or will New Zealand, alongside the rest of the Pacific, just become an economy of outsourcing?
And I know this sounds strange and this doesn't really answer your question, but I think almost that New Zealanders and Australians, for any sort of advancement to be made or a pivot geopolitically or economically to be made, need to lose their pundit brain. I talk to many people who are just, you know, from all walks of life, who are very much in favor of, for example, high-speed rail infrastructure or radically increasing the rail infrastructure in this country. And I suspect that there is appetite for what China could do in Australia among Australians, although I don't want to underestimate the racism of Australians, of course, nor to downplay that here, you know, being serious for a second. But it's interesting that almost everybody that I talk to invariably says, oh, but other people won't go for that. They're always thinking about what this hypothetical third-party voter might think, not what is best or what they believe in. And you have to kill the cop in your head, yes, but you have to kill the pundit in your head as well. And I'm not sure when that cultural change is going to happen and how soon or whether it will happen in Australia and in New Zealand in time, because that is a prerequisite for a lot of this.
It's interesting that we've seen countries in the Pacific go down this route. We've seen the Solomons make agreements with China, and we've also seen Australia and New Zealand shit their pants and start screaming about it, saying it's not fair. Why are they doing that? And I believe the Solomon Islands PM just went, well, you guys don't give us shit, frankly, and you don't deliver on anything. It's just words. You want to keep us on side. These guys are promising us a hospital. Like, what you got? And the answer was, well, we've had a close relationship with you, and this will seriously impact the thing. And these guys are just going, impact what? You're not offering me anything. There's no fucking Marshall Plan for the Pacific Islands. You know, like the Cook Islands, and you've seen Winston getting huffy about it. They're allowed to make decisions, you know, and they are making decisions. And it will be the two former British colonial outposts with the most white people in, which will be the last to swing this around because of the inherent xenophobia of those things. You couldn't possibly let non-Europeans do things. You know, that's not how it works. You know, next thing you know, the next king will be Chinese. Good God.
Next king will be Chinese. We can only pray. Inshallah, we get a Chinese king.
It's a really
that's
young
what
one.
we're looking for.
Who's the kid, like William's kid or whatever? Who's the one that's in line for the throne?
Which one? The one who's like half Asian?
I don't know. There's a half Asian one?
No.
There's a half.
You mean George? Anyway.
Yeah. Whoever that is, you just need to like show him enough like manhwas and anime.
No, stop. Stop.
No.
We've got a good
We need to
couple of
show-
updates from the chat. One is that we haven't seen an update in the ABC Australia numbers because Amazon Web Services died on them. Thank you, fake Lego trees, for that. So that's why the ABC Australia numbers are not updating. If anyone else is following along there.
The hate media have failed us again.
Can
we get the hate media quote on the screen, please?
Yeah, can we pull the hate media quote, please?
I think this is one of the funnier things that happened this week, which was Peter Dutton describing the ABC and was it the Guardian describing them just as the hate media. And I'm just like, to be honest, Peter Dutton, come on 1 of 200. We hate media too.
Yeah, we will commit to that stance publicly if you come on 1 of 200.
We do almost every week. Coswell
Not to be
asked,
too on brand, but there is a deep cut in the Saiyan arc of Dragon Ball Z where Nappa says he hates the media and then blows up a news helicopter. And I think that we could use that as a drop.
incredible. Coswell asks, my question is, does Australia count early in mail and votes first or last? I have no idea. Does anybody know?
I don't know. Do we have anyone in the Australian studio who knows what happens with the mail ballots? Okay. Early voting is counted last.
Yep. I'm also hearing that.
I like this bit.
That's a good bit.
Yeah.
Do we want to throw to that Dutton seat as well, if we can? So we're zooming in on Dixon, where Dixon runs, and he is trailing to Ali France of the ALP. So let's hope that continues because it'll be fucking funny.
Yeah. Good God. Grim.
It'd be likely the best result for the coalition, though, because it would be it would be the end of the kind of Turnbull through the Abbott era, because all of those guys, Abbott, Turnbull thinking, these are all those guys. This would be the bit where they go, right, okay, we've tried it this way, we have to restart now. And that'll
even
be
Turnbull has turned away from that, right? Turnbull's come out against the
he fucking hates them, he hates he hates Tony Abbott because Tony Abbott's a fucking psychopath, and he hates Scott Morrison because
Scott Morrison's a fucking psychopath.
He is, and also because he shit himself in Engadine Macca's in 1996 when the Cronulla Sharks lost to the Brisbane Broncos in the grand final. We all know this,
Why does he hate Peter Dutton though?
Peter Dutton's mother hates him.
Yeah. Peter Dutton gets booed in his own front room, It's like the guy's just not popular. And I think it's like he's the enforcer, he's the sure boss guy. Like he's not meant to be leading the party. It's like you leave your house and you kind of come home and find that your dog is now like in charge. Like for these guys, it is like Peter Dutton is just a shit. Yes, exactly. He's like a less fun Bluey.
And just worse personality. On top of that,
he's a bingo. Yeah,
he keeps sniffing people's butts. It's really weird.
Oh, come on!
Hitting on somebody at the bar. So, are you a Lucky's dad or a bandit?
I'm not. This is just going on my head, and I'll keep it that way.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, as the night goes on and this trend continues, the swing is like really significant now. It started out.
It looks like YouTube. It looks like YouGov's MRP poll was right, which is interesting given how fucked up their system is. But like the fact that YouGov poll may have been right and they may end up with a bigger majority is, I mean, it's heartening. in that the Tories aren't winning. We're not doing 2019 again. Maybe this is because they were so scared of it that they campaigned harder. Like I said, there's a lot of deep trauma in the Australian Labor Party as a result of 2019. There is a lot of, just because it says we're winning, we cannot possibly rely on the polls, which is good in a way.
Yeah, we've got the swing as it's just been increasingly heading in the ALP's favour. It started with about a -1 swing away from the coalition. It's now up to -5.55, which is yeah, it's not looking good. And some of that is going to be, small numbers and looking more significant from certain electorates at the moment, right? But if it even continues at half that, this is just going to be an absolute stomping. I think we're just coming up to a point where we're going to take another break as well. Thank you to everyone in the audience who's chatting and asking questions and adding their 2 cents. Chuck some things in there while we're on break, but remember to hydrate while we are off screen as well. And we'll catch you again in 5 to 6 minutes, I think.
Yeah, 5 to 6 minutes.
Maybe even 7, I'm hearing.
7. The studio's saying 7. That's right. 7.
All right.
7 minutes.
Catch you again in 7
The
minutes.
streets are saying 7.
Let's throw to a break, folks.
No, it's if it lasts more than 4 hours, John.
Consult a physician or give yourself a pat on the back at my age.
Yeah, I've been wondering how long it's going to take them to call the count as well.
Check out Mr. Civilized over there.
Guys,
That's a Brian Johnson
come
effect.
on.
This was to lead us into more talk on the seat of Dixon. Come on. Amateur hour shit.
Greens are ahead in Brisbane. It's looking positive for them. So
No, they're not.
They're not.
No, that was they happened while you were away from the mic. So it was initially thought that they were going to be leading, and they had to restart the count because first preferences weren't falling the way they expected. So there's a chance that they will be losing that seat.
Well, literally the first actual electoral thing that I say on this, and it's totally wrong. So just to show you, sometimes I should be losing more hinges.
Losing more hinges.
ABC also now reporting Labour ahead in Peter Dutton's seat of Dixon. I know we saw it earlier, but it's now hitting the news wires.
You heard it here first, folks.
You did hear it here
Have a
first.
look.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Ooh,
how unfortunate.
sad times.
Let's keep it that way, eh?
It's in dicks, son.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, there's a really interesting point that someone raised in the chat from Fake Lego Trees, where there was this real insane media campaign being aimed at the Greens, just calling them anti-Semites, like just postering this shit everywhere. A really concerted attack on what is essentially a minor party. Do you feel like?
Yeah, I'm glad that doesn't happen in New Zealand.
I was about to throw to that question. Like, why is there such this overt focus on a minor party in the Australian context? In New Zealand, it's tied back to Labour, right? Like, how is Labour going to work with this group who are extremists? I'm wondering if some of these, newer parties are seen as perhaps more of a threat than they have previously been.
It's about what we represent, isn't it? It's about representing a change which actually threatens capital rather than just tightening the screws on the poorest and removing workers' rights and kind of letting the capital flow more freely. Like, the Greens are a threat because effectively it was okay to have Green parties for a few decades as long as they were sticking to the environmental messages because things weren't quite getting as desperate as they might be about 30 years ago. And then all of the parties start to cannibalize some of their policies, but doing it in a way which didn't threaten capital. And now it's like, no. The contradictions, they keep on heightening, and we have to do something a little bit more extreme to deal with them. And even when that's presented in a way which is universally beneficial to the majority of people, the parties which rely on business as usual cannot possibly stand it. And it becomes that thing that fundamentally these parties then have to develop political strategies and policies to deal with things like a media which will just savage them without a right of reply, or and that then becomes another reason to hate them. It's them defending themselves because they fight back. That's another reason that you've got to hate them.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I think, a relatively cogent critique in the satire film Erst wieder da, which I think in English was called He's Back Again, or He's Back, or something, which is about if Hitler were resurrected in Germany. And very curiously, people ask him, like, "Oh, who would you support electorally?" And he says, "I think the Greens." And this isn't some kind of like, actually the Nazis were socialist kind of idiocy. He goes on to explain, they're really about like caring for the fatherland and like cultivating and mastering, the domain of the greenery here. And I think he was really onto something.
Oh, this is getting spicy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are we gonna clip that or what's happening here?
Let me change the pronoun in that sentence because it really changes the meaning. They, the filmmakers, plural. I don't know if the filmmakers were plural, but they were onto something. And it's really about the same. It's easy pickings because every party in Hitler is. In Germany, sorry, it's a Hitler party.
You just go from strength to strength.
There's a party in Hitler's pants, and you're invited.
We're just passing the 2-hour mark, folks. This is where it gets fucking good.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, just getting in here, just to interrupt the Hitler chat. 7 News declares no path to victory for the coalition.
Fuck. That's so bleak.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so funny.
Okay, I actually had to have say about that. But yes, not to say that every party in Germany is the Hitler party, right? But it's more or is full of radiates Hitler particles like Chernobyl, the way as Trotsky sort of put it. Well, Trotsky didn't mention Chernobyl. That would have been crazy if he knew. But I think it's more that that's been succeedingly vindicated, right? If we've seen the way that the German Greens have gone. And that is exactly the kind of Green Party that, not necessarily that it used to be, I'm not saying that they're in bad faith, they were very much just barefoot as legal types, but when they were ineffective, when it was about this kind of like very, when it could pass as something which wasn't threatening to capital, I think, as you've rightly pointed out, John, that there was no issue with this, right? It's only when they have really understood their environmental programs as needing an economic program, because the restructuring of the political economy is necessary to the survival of humanity, that there have been these increasing bad faith attacks in the last couple of decades. Previously, I think the Greens, like in New Zealand, our experience with them is them having been dismissed as, they're a bunch of weed-smoking hippies, but that was really about where it went. And increasingly, you get this full spectrum attack, not only against individual MPs, particularly women and women of colour in these parties, but of the kind of purely, like the very obvious ones, like, the Greens are anti-Semitic, but also the bad faith ones, like, why isn't there a blue-green party? And why do they need to have an economic platform? They should stay in their lane. They don't, the Greens shouldn't care about workers. It should really be about planting monocrop pines.
What does the name even mean at this stage?
Right, and I think, the success that the Australian Greens have had under Banton, not to lay it at the feet of a person, but the success that they've had, I think, really has been about understanding that they don't have to kowtow to the Murdoch media, that they don't have to play that game, that they can be smart about it, and more importantly, that they can have substance and address people's real needs and try to circumvent the information channels to do so. And that has been a lesson, and a lesson in opposing Australian Labor where they need to, that I hope the New Zealand Greens take away from this.
Okay, who wants to put their finger to their ear for what's in the chat?
Oh, wait, no, I am hearing a couple of things. Both Sky News and ABC are calling it for Labor. So
Wow.
is that one of the quickest calls
That was quick.
ever?
Anthony Albanese is the first Prime Minister to win 2 elections in a row
Yeah.
since John Howard.
Like,
Like 21 years ago. That's it is insane that is what has happened here. Especially because I think even the Treasurer admitted that this time last year, their chances were fucking minimal. And I'm really hoping that local parties in New Zealand will look at exactly what it is Albo did and go, maybe we should try some of that because it might work here. Who knows?
Yeah,
I mean,
he
our
was just
electoral
lying
system-
like Carney was in Canada, right? It's really
Yeah.
looking like there is a Trump swing, which is gratifying. And it is maybe slightly bringing the political class in alignment with the electorate for the first time. And I don't know how fucking long. But yeah, not sad about it. Again, though, we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the next few days, right? What are the big announcements going to be? And will it be similar to Canada, where he'll stand up and say, "Oh, we're here for all Australians"? You know, okay, that's just pap. That's just something that everyone's going to say, especially those people who usually vote for the coalition but decided to vote for us, and we're going to stop the boats, right? Like, is that what we're going to be seeing, or will it be a party of a Western democracy that finally begins to admit that the writing's on the wall with some of this stuff, and begins to enact policies that meet the moment a little bit more?
Well, they've got a policy of cutting student debt by, is it 10, 15, 20% or something like that? And that's some of their day one legislation is they're just going to cut everyone's student debt by a fixed percentage. So they're recognizing some of the structural issues within the system, which, you know, again, though, if New Zealand Labour wants to run on cutting everyone's student debt by 15%, you're gonna get fucking votes all over the show from.
You can't just bribe people, folks. This is what I mean about like you could just say you're going to do it and then not do it. Like if you
it's not even bribing them. It's just saying, look, the government doesn't need that money, but you do right now. So why don't you have that money? Put it into the economy. There's, you know, you can make a fucking economic argument for doing this shit.
Bribing, right?
Yeah, if you're brave enough, and this is the thing, like Mark Carney is effectively a coward. You know, he is. He is running away from being a leader and kind of just following, well, 40% both ways. That means if I please most of my people and some of their people, then that gives me over 50%. Therefore, I'm the smartest man in the world. It's about trying to convince people that what you are leading people to is better, rather than just trying to copy other people's policies and follow them on. It's, you know, and, you know, Albanese's policies aren't all great. Let's face it, they're not. But there's some stuff in there which is making things better for people's fucking lives. And this was one of the things that came up in the UK yesterday, which was even mayors who won their seats for Labour went, it would have been nice if the government that had gone in on a landslide hadn't spent the last 12 months kicking everyone in the fucking bollocks. You know, they stripped the winter fuel payment out and means tested it, and they cut the fuck out of stuff. And people went, no wonder we got our asses kicked. What did you think was going to fucking happen? Whereas at least, you know, for all of the things that we know that Albanese and the ALP are bad at and terrible at, there were some parts of what they have offered at this election which says, I'm going to make your life a bit easier. You know, both parties are, you know, I think the Labour have got a price gouging policy where they're going to stop supermarkets from price gouging. The coalition was going to put in legislation to break up the supermarket monopoly. That's coming from the right, you know, and I know Luxon's talking about it at the minute. However, the way it was framed was, you know, a coalition wants to implement a breakup policy, and I just thought that's for family court. That's the divorced dad vote right there, you know. It's the fathers to justice boys. But the fact that they've won it's kind of good news as long as Chris Hipkins recognises the moment he's in and is being not advised by Rob Hammond.
As we've said many times, or just whoever else is part of that cohort, right? This stuff, it is actually looking a lot easier to do as the centre-left party than people have been making out, and especially in the climate. Do we say stuff like, well, a year is still a long time in politics, right? So the geopolitical context could change a whole bunch by whenever the next New Zealand election is, which could be this year. But if it's next year, who knows, right? Who knows? But
Winston Peters crash out. Winston Peters crash out this month. You want to be the petty bitch who denies David Seymour the deputy prime ministership.
you'll go down in
want-
history.
Yeah, Winston, come on, it'd be the perfect end to your really fucking odd career.
This
to
is
be
your
crashing
legacy,
out.
Winston.
Yeah, Winston, you have to
Winston.
serve cunt. The people demand that you
You
serve
have
cunt.
28
Please do
days.
this.
He could, like, if he did it, he'd probably get in at the next election in opposition. You know, he'd get in just because people hate him. You know,
Yeah.
and that you know, people hate Seymour so much that people just go, yeah, I'll vote for Winston because that was funny. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
he's mainlining X posts these days as like his entire political direction. So he might as well just be like, you know, do a funny thing. It's not the funniest thing he could do, but it's quite a funny thing.
It's the maybe fifth or sixth funniest thing he could do. We are.
I'm hearing that Band has a huge lead in his seat.
Oh, look at that.
Look at
Ooh,
that classic
Yes, that's what we love
Melbourne.
to see.
Ah,
Thank you, Melbourne.
he'll be drinking flat whites
Yeah,
tonight.
wow.
What?
Adam Band
What?
getting bar party numbers. He's putting up the Saddam Hussein numbers today.
Yeah,
Well done,
I'm
man.
hearing
Yeah.
that Putin is winning Melbourne.
Holy shit.
That's the seats. That's
Mm.
those liberal seats.
Oh god.
You know, it's
Massacre.
Is the cap the Bob Catter party by any
yeah,
chance?
yeah, it is.
Mhm.
Let's talk about everybody's
Oh,
favorite.
wait, no,
favorite let
Is the
1,000
CA the Bob
Yeah.
Catter party? I assume it is.
Let 100 flowers bloom.
Yeah, because every 3 months, a person's torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland. If you saw during the election his amazing Facebook video where he went fucking nuts at Woolies for not putting his nativity display that he wanted to put in there. He wanted to put a nativity display in Woolies at Easter, and I'm like, one, wrong. Like, he died at Easter. Like, they nailed him to a couple of bits of wood and then chucked him in a cave, and then he came back, and then he was just like, peace out, I'm going up, I'm going to heaven. I'm like, you could have just died and gone to heaven. That's like how it works, buddy. But he was furious, and he was just like, you know what? You know, that Jesus would have treated you people fucking terrible. Hold on, 1 second. Jesus would have treated you people fucking terribly. And he would have thrown all of you guys out of the temple. And just, but he's also out there talking about genuinely going, what we need to do is for fight toxic masculinity is to give every 14-year-old a gun and teach them how to shoot. And I'm like, that's worked great for America.
A gun and a love ince in every household. I think. I mean, look, Jesus could have just gone straight to heaven, but why are you allergic to serving? What do you have against it?
He's a messy bitch who loves drama. We know that about him.
Yes.
Not as dramatic as
absolutely.
his dad. His dad literally invented the rainbow to say sorry because he crashed out a bit too hard.
Like you can go to the club and have a crazy time and then just like not show up until work, or you can go to brunch the next morning, show off your side wounds.
That was actually from Top Surgery.
Fucking hell.
Here we go.
Jesus Christ.
We're
Top
gonna get
surgery.
clipped by someone who hates Kyle, and then that clip is gonna make the rounds and everything. Like us being the way we are about Jesus.
I'm
is gonna
into
make
it.
the rounds
I'm
and
into it.
everything.
We've had a
You're into it,
question,
Kyle?
from Stephanie John asking, how many hats do you have?
Enough.
Fewer than Elon Musk, and I'm funnier.
That is indisputable. I think that should give you Elon Musk's money.
It's just for being funny and not a cunt. You should be getting Elon Musk's money. Yeah.
Like I'm not saying no to it, but also
I mean,
That's
unfortunately, to get that
terrifying.
money,
Me
you have
with
to be proud.
money is a bad thought. It's a bad idea.
We're not going to do it. It does look like the Greens might end up losing a couple of seats here, honestly.
Oh yeah.
I've just seen that. I've seen that on the ABC coverage. They just had a table up with the seats transferring across from one to the other, and it looks like a lot of a lot of coalition seats are going, but there's a few Greens in there too. So it does genuinely look like Labour have not, incumbency tends to affect a party the other way, but it hasn't. I mean, I would be very interested to see if they had Labour strategists coming in from the UK or anywhere else on this, because we know that Dutton had one of Trump's guys come over, which explains a lot. But, I mean, historically, everywhere a UK Labour strategist has turned up in Australia, bad things have happened. They sent out somebody to help Julia Gillard. They didn't. They sent people over to help Kamala Harris. It didn't help.
So that's why Chris Hipkins went over there instead to talk to Keir Starmer. It looks like, similar to Canada, that this is a consolidation electorate or an election where people are seeing the chaos that the world is being thrown into, and they're saying, these guys have done okay. Given everything, they're doing all right. We want to give them a bit more of a mandate to keep us on the steady tracks. And when someone like Labour or the Liberals in Canada do that, and at the same time kind of maybe do a bit of this austerity speak, this is not I'm not endorsing this, by the way, or do the anti-immigrant stuff or whatever, be more actively racist, be more clearly bigoted and cruel, while also doing a little bit of the economic populism. Same in Canada. Carney kind of gave more people dental, gave more people access to ECE, even before they'd gone to the election. It means that people feel like, one, they're going to be a little bit safer with the centre-left government, and two, because the right-wing opposition needs to react to that, and the only way that they know to turn the ratchet is to the right, they just have lost their minds.
I mean, imagine if fair pay agreements had gone through before the election. Like, imagine if people could point to that and know that Labour had made their lives materially better.
Yeah. I mean, and we talked about this in the live stream earlier in the week as well. In regards to Hipkins' policy bonfire, you can just do stuff. You can actually just do stuff if you have the majority, and you can prove to the electorate that you're the person that they should trust to deliver for you in a cost of living crisis. And I think, like in Canada, Labour has been able to do that for the electorate this time around. The electorate sees a whole bunch of chaos coming down the line, and they've voted in their self-interest. And perhaps we're also getting to a point, and I don't know, like maybe you can give some insight on this, Jenny, in terms of like digital marketing or like kind of what's happening in those spaces. But we're almost moving into a decent, like past sensitivity to that, or people are becoming more desensitized to this overt, like bigoted commentary and digital marketing comms, right? Some of those more alternate.
Sorry, just interrupting here so we can call this one first. Peter Dutton is being projected to lose his seat in Dixon. Right, ABC is just flashing it up now. He is fucking struggling, cunt.
Yeah,
he's gonna get stomped.
Fucking loser.
This and the Pierre Poilievre, right? This and Pierre Poilievre in Canada, the leaders of the party are also being punished, in part, I think, for their rhetoric.
And everybody outside of America, I mean, you said they hate Trump, right? Like, this is a weird kind of anti-Trump swing in a way. It's just true. I mean, we are all living in the Mark Carnival. That's all I'm going to say about it. Mark Woke is rising. Mark Woke is rising.
The Mark Carnation Revolution. That's, we are. It is.
No, now try and get one for. Come on, try and get one for elbow. Try and get one for elbow.
Well, we know our ass from an elbow in the southern hemisphere, etc., etc. But
I'm hearing that we're in the elbow nation.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that. I think we should be putting our correspondent who said that in the torment nexus, actually.
I'm
Jim,
hearing
I heard
I'm
that
hearing they
you
already
just
live in a
joined a startup where you are creating the Torment Nexus. Can you comment on that?
I'm hearing it's called Dylan's Basilisk.
Dylan's basilisk. Holy shit.
I actually do want your answer on the question I was asking though, Jenny. After the break,
I'm hearing that we're ending.
have you seen a shift in the way that audiences or electorates respond to that kind of marketing at all? Or is this kind of a first kind of interaction with that in these last two elections?
No, I mean, it's been brewing for a while, even over just like the past 2 years or so in most, and again, I'm going to mean the word democracy here in the loosest possible sense. Most of the Western democracies essentially have seen a huge swing towards marketing heavily based on stereotypes. And it's mainly because we've entered an age whereby, for a long time, if you were in advertising, it was believed that personalization was the big thing. If you felt like an ad targeted you specifically, you'd be much more likely to buy a product. And as we've been given more data and more tools, like Aura, for example, to figure out exactly who we're talking to when we're saying particular products, the level of personalization has sort of veered from, maybe this is what someone who is blonde and in their 20s might like, to like, here's someone who lives in this lower decile neighborhood, here's what their consumer patterns are, and here's how to best speak to them like a compatriot and a friend, essentially. And I think the level of granularity with people's private information and data has made advertising so much more fraught. Because I think if you think about the racial and ethnic makeup and cultural makeup of a lot of modern cities, they're very diverse, right? So if you're Heinz, and I'm saying Heinz specifically because they made some incredibly racist campaigns in London, if you're Heinz and you want to sell pasta sauce to people, you're going to run two different types of ads, one ad really with two families. The Caucasian family has both its families present, and the family of color does not. Single mom, Black family, things like that. So obviously, to many people, that reinforced the stereotype that people of color don't often have fathers present. If you're Heinz again, and you didn't learn from that message, you run a few weeks later an ad which evokes minstrel characters, showing models with ketchup smeared on and around their lips, mimicking the exaggerated large red lips of minstrel performers.
That's actually English culture. I don't know if you know that. You can't really question that.
Morris
advertising used to be personalized, and then they realized that Italians are just like that. So really, stereotypes are okay, and we should do that.
Yeah, regardless, the point I'm trying to make here is that these are not things which happen in a basement somewhere, right? Like if you think about an ad, there are maybe about 80 people involved in its creation, like minimum, at a large national scale. And that's consultant partners, that's creative agencies, that's partners in a firm, that's directors, PDs. So everyone in this chain at some point would have seen a storyboard with that exaggerated expression and gone, and guess I'm being paid to film that. Guess that's okay with me. Guess that's okay to film that. And even though there's been, I suppose, significant commentary on it, none of that commentary has ever actually reached, I would say, public news in any meaningful degree. Like, people are arguing on LinkedIn about it, right? But it's not like it made the 7:00 news. People weren't like, Heinz, incredibly racist company, we can no longer buy beans from them. Like, I think the reception and the anti-immigration and the racist sentiment towards anyone who is, I guess, not of the Caucasian majority in these Western democracies has been so ramped up and so evident and so exaggerated these past couple of years by people in power that I think there's a real chance here that essentially the governments and the people that comprise those governments just don't see minority groups as human anymore. And that's just where it's going with the trans rhetoric stuff, right? Like, they just fundamentally want to dehumanize people of particular minority groups that don't suit the majority's agenda. And advertising is a really, really evil vehicle for that, because think of what you normalize in an ad. Like, if you have an ad, if you gradually make ads during the year for people like New Zealand lemon beef, Australian lemon beef, Woolworth, Coles. And you make these ads and you think about making ads about families and you always exclude people of color. What you're creating then in your mind is a visual language, right, for the country. In the countries, in Australia and in the UK and in New Zealand's visual language for advertising, we are slowly seeing an eradication of minority groups. And that's just, I think, something which we have to contend with if you're a creative in this sphere, is that you are contributing essentially to the erasure of the people that make up this country in favor of a Caucasian hegemony, essentially. And it's only getting worse. It was bad a decade ago in Australia, particularly. But in the past 3 years, we've seen a really, really large uptake in open racial stereotypes. Really, like the Heinz ad, like I just said, like who is doing minstrelly? Who is doing minstrel jokes in 2025? Truly, like who in their right mind could endorse that? Could run these ads multiple times in the course of a year? People that just fundamentally don't see the groups that they're aping or mimicking as human, and that's really what it is. Yeah.
So how's that swinging away from the people echoing that bigotry?
I would say that the public opinion, I would say this personally, is shifting. And when I say shifting, I don't mean that people in Australia are getting less racist. I think people in Australia are feeling more guilty about it, by and large, in terms of public sentiment. And cynically, I think I'm actually going to say that a lot of the backlash that I see from people, especially in this APAC sphere towards racist advertising, is not, oh, that was so awful, like this was a hard period for this particular group and we shouldn't be doing that. It's, oh, I can't believe a company thinks that's a good move. Like the way people are framing this stuff is not as a critique against the moral imperative or a moral stance against racism. There's almost this like really, really deep guilt in here, which the country has in general, and also just the idea that, oh, how could a company act against financial interests by being racist? It's almost like a cognitive dissonance whereby people know what they should feel bad about, but are becoming increasingly capable of only seeing, I guess, divorcing company and government decisions from human decisions. That makes sense. Like people going, oh, like why would Dutton say this? Like doesn't he know it's bad for the vote? Not, oh, why would he say this? It's clearly motherfucking racist. And that's where I think we're sitting
back to
now.
what kind of came up earlier, which was yes, I'd love this investment in our country, but those people would do it. You know, those people are against it. Me personally, I'm against it, but I think everyone else is, so I'm not going to make a fuss about it. You know, and it is that kind of flattening of the experience. I mean, we've had a really good example in this election, which is the Anzac Day neo-Nazis heckling the Welcome to Country in Melbourne. Melbourne, a place which is noted for having a bit of a Nazi problem, as we were all aware after they turned up to support Posey Parker a few years ago. But they turned up and they heckled the Welcome to Country and were drowned out and eventually escorted away by the police. And it became a thing about, should we be doing this everywhere anymore? And Peter Dutton went, no, I don't think we should. It should only be at significant events. And a journalist said to him, so you don't think Anzac Day is a significant event? He went, no, I don't. Which is like fucking political suicide. But a lot, like TikTok comments are not reality. But also you had a lot of people going, well, yes, I think it's gone too far. Welcome to Country has gone too far. Why are we being welcomed to a country that our forefathers fought and died for? And I think Jim Chalmers is the Labour treasurer. I think it's Jim Chalmers. He was asked about it and he went, look, I think we need to remember that the only reason we're having this discussion is because neo-Nazis disrupted an Anzac Day ceremony. And I don't think anyone wants to be on the side of neo-Nazis. He said this immediately after Peter Dutton went, well, yes, actually, I think it shouldn't be there, which was possibly one of the easiest wins I've ever seen a major politician take. You know, like one of the easiest wins ever, just to go, I'm not calling Peter Dutton a Nazi. Yes, he's a cop. Yes, he looks like his skeleton is 2 sizes too big for his skin. Yes, he's alarmingly bald. Yes, I'm not sure his wife didn't build him in a lab. Yes, he's incredibly unpopular. But he is not a supporter of neo-Nazis. He's just echoing what they did on Anzac Day. And, I mean, I I don't. Can we get the quote from Bill Shorten that's recently been set up on the screen, please? Because the coalition, without a doubt, has run the worst campaign in living memory. That is the sound of a former Labour leader who's very happy that his campaign is now number 2 in that list. Because his campaign was the fucking pits. You know, his party was ahead. His personal ratings are in the fucking toilet. But have they run the worst campaign in memory? Hell yes, they have. All hell is breaking loose out there for the coalition. I did say it at the top of the show. I went, look, the coalition needs to move on from their 9 years in government, and they failed to do it by putting Dutton in charge. This is going to make them move on. What they turn into is going to depend whether or not they look at the Labour Party and go, shit, maybe we should be more like them, or they look at Pauline Hanson and go, oh, she's so sexy.
We were saying exactly the same thing. Apart from the last,
yes, you were saying how attractive
That's
Pauline
very
Hanson
Jenny
was.
coded, yeah.
No,
apart from
I
the
was
last
not-
part, apart from the last part in the Canada live stream, like what do the Liberal Party do now? You know, their leader lost the seat as well. They had actually tried to shift against Trump because it was far more existential for them, right? After having done this Trump rhetoric. Up until that point, where there'd been, you know, huge leads over the Liberal Party, the Conservatives then found that by echoing that, they seemed to be on-siding themselves with a neighbor which had just said that they were going to be a next. Like, how do you genuinely, how do you come back from that, except by completely rebuilding the party into something else? And what we're probably going to see, given what's happening in the UK, is both the Liberals in Australia and the Conservatives in Canada look to the Reform Party and say, hey, we can probably lie about a bunch of this stuff as long as the centre-left party, like Starmer has in the UK, like Mark Carney looks like he might be about to start doing in Canada, decides to be the full party of capital, like brutal austerity, coming down hard on minorities, on journalists, on the right to protest, cutting public services, giving handouts to private equity. It allows your proto-fascist party, well, I say proto-fascist, but you know, only in terms of branding, they're fascist to the core, to come in and say, oh, we're going to make your lives better. We're going to do that by, what were you saying, John, that a lot of Reform voters in the recent UK local elections were looking at? They wanted to tax the rich more. They wanted to nationalise public services again, you know, and big industry.
They want elements of classic, like, socialist policies.
Yeah.
They want things that the Labour Party used to stand for decades ago, and that there was a proven appetite for, demonstrated between 2015 and 2019. Like 40%. Nobody got 40% at the last election in the UK. The vote had split 3 ways because the Tory party split in half. We are just getting some extremely fun news that some seats that were Liberal Party or national strongholds are getting laboured, frankly. His banks. Now, on first preference, it looks like Coleman's out ahead, but once you break it down, Z Soon has won that one. Okay, so there are some surprise victories coming up here. The seat of Hughes is also, here we go. Like, that one was not a target. That was not expected. And I think the swing there that I saw was something like 9% to Labour. Like, 9% to the incumbent government. How badly have you fucked a dog in public to get this result? Like what anime have you been watching? Like, what have you been doing instead of campaigning? Because this looks fucking disastrous.
Yeah, but I mean, in the end, this is what this is what's going to happen, right? This is the perfect opportunity for capital-backed fascist rhetoric to do the "we're on your side," and as far as I can tell, the centre-left neoliberal parties are pretty willing to play ball on that in Western democracies to date. And it'll be interesting to see if Australia does the same. All right, we will go to break now. With this coming so close to being called by everybody, we'll probably pop back for a while, and we might call the live stream not too far after coming back from break. But stick around; we'll have a couple of final sign-offs, and we'll wrap it up. Let's close it out. We are so professional.
Incredibly professional.
Professional we all are.
Oh, man.
Has it come back? Hopefully so. Okay, audio should be back now. We had so many insightful things to tell you.
So many actionable threats were made
Yeah.
by me just then. Like so many actionable
many.
threats.
Yeah. So many injuries being created in Minecraft specifically.
Yeah, we're not getting
against
taken
certain
down this
members.
time. So we had to
Yeah.
mute. We slammed the emergency mute button on John.
Cancelled by the woke mob yet again.
Well, look,
Can we
otherwise
bleep things on this? Because I want to say like a lot of the. Well,
No,
we can't.
we can't.
no.
No.
We can't bleep
Oh.
live, so we're not
No,
doing
no.
it.
I even had to deregister. Like, I had to take the US episode, the US election live stream, and put it private because of what you said at the end of the live stream that time, Simone.
What did I
Look,
say at the end of the live
I'm not
stream?
gonna. You're not gonna catch me out like that.
Like, frankly,
get that trap.
like what
I
needs
don't
to happen
remember.
next? Like what needs to happen next after this election is that Peter Dutton and all of the coalition parties need to
Beep.
and that's probably quite easy for everyone to understand, if you if you catch my drift.
This message
In
is
Minecraft.
authorized by Simone.
Absolutely. Oh, I'd like to know as well. I'm looking at some live reporting now on the BBC. Apparently, Tony Abbott trying to enter a watch party for the election at the Liberal HQ right now, and turning away and deciding to not go in. So they must be feeling pretty great about that.
He went up to the door and just went, "You got any raw onions?"
I'm hearing news that we can't do something in Minecraft because Minecraft is BDS.
Oh no!
Oh no.
No, doesn't that mean we should do it in Minecraft?
Oh yeah, we need to make them complicit in this somehow. We need to tie all those threads together. Yeah. Gosh. Really grim reporting though. I'm seeing pretty much everyone reporting on Dutton's loss, but in various, I guess, severities. Someone said the night has gone from bad to worse for Peter Dutton. One outlet said. Someone else talking about how coalition supporters are clinging on to hope in the face of adversity. Someone else also saying Peter Dutton has lost the election, lost his own seat, and also drilling it in that it isn't something that's happened since 2007. And that's going to prompt a lot of hand-wringing and chaos within the coalition.
Peter Dutton has lost the mandate of heaven.
Yes. Sky News also saying, hard to imagine a more emphatic rejection of Peter Dutton's Liberal National Coalition than what has played out tonight. So amazing news there.
So I think I'm
Well
interested
done.
Yeah,
in.
to help us understand the mandate of heaven, quirked up white boy who's goaded with the source, Kevin Rudd, is about to join us.
Absolutely.
God,
That's a deep cut
Yeah.
for anyone in
That-
the Discord.
that is a
Oh,
deep
God.
cut to and a long, not a cross. For the
Yeah.
The deep
Labour
cut
Party.
is the fastest.
I'm really interested to see if we are going to continue with a trend of the last 100 years of people like Dutton getting really nice corporate roles coming out of these kind of
yeah.
losses, or
Definitely.
is this finally going to be meeting a threshold by which his reputation is so besmirched that even like tobacco and petroleum companies aren't going to touch him.
No,
Look,
you
the
can
Rio
never be
Tinto
too
building in
dirty.
Sydney. The Rio Tinto building in Sydney is going to need something to scare the pigeons off it. And he may be ideal for this role. I'm also interested if this thorough rejection of the coalition is what finally kills Rupert Murdoch.
Mm.
Wouldn't hate
Like I
to see.
said, pack watch.
Yeah. Wouldn't hate it, but I think highly likely that Dutton's oversized flesh carcass skeleton ends up at some kind of think tank, right? Like probably a nuclear think tank. If we think about the policies that he basically was trying to enact. So I wouldn't be surprised if he went to what was responsible for his nuclear policy to begin with. I see in the chat, Johnny Crawford says, Dutton lands cushy gig as a children's entertainer.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Woof.
He'd be a great mannequin.
Would?
It does.
Would
It
he?
also seems that from some of these Maverick seats, as in seats where they got it wrong, who the two-party preferred would end up being. That there's a lot more of them than I'd imagine. I mean, they're being called. He says, putting his finger to his ear. These Maverick seats are around the country, and it just shows that this is not an election as usual, and that's interesting because that's 3 this week. You know, they may have gone different ways and benefited different people in different ways, but all of like the democratic process at the minute is seemingly in a state of flux, and it's about whether or not you can recognize that moment and lead through it, or you just try and, I don't know, you try and do politics as usual. I heard from a friend who was in the local elections in the UK that Reform UK, who got 670 plus seats, I believe, or 650 seats, Reform sent a letter to every registered voter in the country, every single one, saying, you've registered to vote, your postal vote will be arriving soon, please consider us for these reasons. That's actually overturning kind of traditional British electoral strategy of just playing your percentages and going with your base. They had enough money from whichever source to be able to send a physical letter to everyone in the country. That's a change in how things work. It's a change in how electoral politics works. And it's no longer going to be about playing the percentages. It's about appealing to as many people as possible. I mean, populism is back. It's good again. Awoo, wolf howl. Like, it's time to do some populism because populism works.
Yeah. And
You know, and if the left don't do it, the right fucking will.
And they are. And, you know, mostly through the proxies. So through TPU, through FSU, through Julian Batchelor, you know, and other people like this who have that money to send a whole bunch of brochures. Luckily, they're fucking incompetent. And some of the worst of that stuff hasn't really managed to take off, right? We saw the, roundly rejected Treaty Principles Bill and the huge pushback against that from the New Zealand public, despite just what must have been at least hundreds of thousands, if not millions, spent on trying to market this idea of equality. But they're not going to stop, and they're going to get smarter, and they're going to understand the things that they need to promise perhaps need to drop some of the outright bigotry. And as you say, if Labour aren't doing it, someone else is going to do it. At the moment, though, I don't see any real hope for that. I hope the Greens and the Party Māori try and grasp some of that populism, that new way of doing things, and connect with a whole bunch of new voters. But in the end, Labour need to get on board because they're the only ones with the resource and machinery to really make it happen at that scale, which fucking sucks. The other thing to keep in mind is, we're talking about how it's the centre-left parties who are being able to win out in these last couple of elections. The local elections with the Reform being a kind of different angle on that. ACT said they're going to be running in local elections this time around in New Zealand, right? And the other thing to keep in mind is it's not just that they were centre-left parties, it was that they were incumbents. And National's going to be the incumbent next time around. So, yeah, I really don't trust the political strategists and campaigners on the left to effectively analyze and deliver on this shit at this point, because it feels like we've had the opportunity to win numerous ways over the last 5 years. Because I'm counting the end of the Ardern government where they decided to do nothing with their majority, and they've just failed to do so.
I'm hearing you asking about a mysterious source, and I'm hearing the source was Heinz.
Fucking hell. Come on. I am seeing some comments from the live stream. I think, sorry, the brainworms in my ear who work at the studio are saying that Sky News is now projecting a majority, and it looks like Al Jazeera is projecting a majority as well here. So that's an improvement. Lots of people celebrating Dutton's dethronement on Twitter using all manner of deranged emojis. My heart goes out to all of you. I'm happy that you're happy.
What are you all still doing on Twitter? Get off there. It's bad for you.
I'm actually leading resistance from inside the X house.
The resistance. Changing the system by changing the system from within. Yeah.
Well, it's X.com. Everything happens there.
Sophie has just said, at the end of the night, can we get a comment from the panel about the revelation that Robert Jones Jr. is the author of a Marxist-Leninist analysis of furries?
Okay. That's old news to me. I don't have anything extra to add.
Sorry, can you just go back through that again in stages so that I can?
Yes. So there's been a revelation that Robert Jones Jr., May Senior, I guess, rest in peace, is a gender-neutral toilet. Robert Jones Jr. is the author of a Marxist-Leninist analysis of furries. I see John's eyes are closed. For those who are curious in the chat, the book is called Furries, the Highest Stage of Liberalism. That
sounds like an anti-woke title, though.
No, it's meant to establish the historic significance of the furry fandom through a scientific Marxist-Leninist understanding.
Bob Jones Jr., come on, Posting Cast. I have so many questions.
Watching tonight. Head up, John.
Yeah.
Apparently, ABC's reporting the Prime Minister is on his way to Labour HQ, so we may get an Albo victory speech within the hour. They've just shown some live footage of them chasing his little police car entourage.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Bob Jones Jr. got access to my friend's Discord servers, but good on him.
This is it. When these old guys die, the thing that replaces them may be worse than the old guys, but it may not be. It's a post-Winston political landscape with Shane Jones and Stuart Nash trying to fight it out to be the next Winston is hilarious and shit, and you end up with Casey Costello as some kind of terrible Margaret Thatcher-esque figure for the New Zealand First. fantastic. As we said earlier, the billionaires don't think they're going to die. When Peter Thiel dies, he doesn't do succession planning. When fucking Blood Boy guy dies, they don't do succession planning. Elon Musk may have failed miserably at having 1 million white bastard children. But like none of them are going to be the one. You know what I mean? I think I may have spoken about this recently, and it's if you're a millennial, if you're an elder millennial, we are about to enter a decade of what I like to call millennial death gloating, where a lot of the guys who made all this shit happen are going to die soon. And you should not in any way hold back on how that makes you feel.
No, I mean, I think it's right to exercise caution because it is illegal to say you should kill Elon Musk, for example. I think that's an example of an illegal sentence.
Come on,
Don't do it.
It's illegal to say that Elon Musk.
It is illegal to say that.
Elon Musk.
Yes.
But it's not illegal to say Elon Musk will die.
Because he will.
Because he will. Or I expect him to die. Because
Yes.
I do. There are many ways. And you can put in any major right-wing figure in there and it's still not illegal.
Yeah, the UK Supreme Court has ruled that he is a biological man, which has a 100% chance of death.
Heard it here. Heard it here first.
Yeah, first. We're calling it right now. He's not immortal.
Calling it now Valor Morgellus.
Jesus Christ.
Volodohyrus. All men must serve as well. I think we're hearing this last. I'm hearing that everybody else has finished Game of Thrones.
Could have never watched it.
I don't know. It's like, is this cause for optimism? I mean,
I hope that Vivian gets it all.
I see what you did. What I'm doing, what I'm actually doing is switching back to the election live stream.
Yes.
Is it cause for optimism that the centre-left parties are putting up wins in the face of rabid right-wing bigotry? Is it good that it didn't get heaps worse?
I'm hearing Vivian has won in West Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, I think to call it encouraging or a good sign is really like almost in a way it feels like someone's like pissing into your mouth and you're like, well, I mean, it could be shit. Like it's kind of how that feels a little bit. I think
some people are into that, and the Bob Jones family is quite wide.
Yeah, sorry. Don't mean to disparage anyone who is into piss and shit in their mouths. I respect all of you as part of my community. But I think that it's one of those things which I personally worry about a little bit when we have these, I guess, a win is a win mentalities. Once we have our small, insignificant, karmically cruel and awful win, that essentially people just go, great, well then we've fixed that. Like we've defeated the great evil. And like we haven't, right? Like we have never, we will never defeat.
Job done.
Yeah, like I mean, we haven't. Pauline Hanson's been politically active for what a million years at this point, Triassic era, and she's never been put away. You know what I mean? Like we haven't defeated the great evil yet, not even a little bit. And my one worry, especially with a country like Australia, whereby I mean, we also had the voice referendum win. Like these are people that are so predisposed almost politically as a country to just go, oh, well, they'll probably vote in my interests. Like, I'll probably be okay. Like, oh, no worries. You know what I mean?
Even that, I think, is charitable.
Yeah, and so, like, if we keep that in mind and we think about the landscape that Australia is politically, I think, yeah, having this victory, yeah, sure, I mean, it's better than nothing. But it, like I said, it is like someone just, doing like the lesser of two evils into your mouth, essentially. We need to be really careful about how we frame this victory, I think, on the, I guess, as Australians, as left allies to Australian leftists. I hate the word leftist to begin with, but I think we do be careful about what we encouraged, I guess, the lesson learned to be here, right? Like, it's not that everyone suddenly grew a moral spine or a moral imperative and was suddenly all as a country like pro-immigration, pro-gay rights, pro-trans people. I think we really saw here, I think, this sort of swing away from, I would say, a big part of the turnout has been because of the way that Dutton and Albanese were playing personal politics, right? And a big part of it is that tariff pushback, how they frame themselves as individual leaders, and not that Australia is suddenly just on board with being quote unquote woke again. So just be careful. Like, if we want an ideological victory of some kind, based on who people thought might be better for the economy out of two evil white men, then have we really won a victory? I don't know. It's hard to say that for people who are on the left spectrum. Yeah.
I think we have to really consider here that there is the ideological project of the left, which is fragmented and frustrating, and we all hate each other for various reasons, mostly to do with Twitter beefs. But there is that kind of wider, like the normie sentiment, he says, sounding like a Joe Rogan podcast thing and looking like one right now as well, I realize. But that I've been thinking about the 2017 win for Labour under Ardern, and yes, it was because Little stepped down, but it was also because, you know how we talk about the US only acts in the interests of like their own progression when you have an enemy like you've got the Soviet Union or something to fight against. With the 2017 election, we had actually existing Trump out there as a view of the right-wing project where its natural endpoint is. And that was influential in people looking at a tired national government going, I don't think these guys have the juice. We currently here have a chaotic coalition that hate each other and don't get stuff done and have cost billions of dollars to the economy and put loads of people out of work. And the indications from the two coalition party partners is that they would like to go full Trump. They want to do more of this. And there is an opportunity there to turn that kind of instinctive revulsion at Trumpism against Winston Peters, against David Seymour, and use it as a way to make things better. But that doesn't mean that the Labour Party are, one, smart enough, or two, capable enough to actually do that. But should they do it, we're still going to have to push them like hell to get them anywhere, because they fundamentally will think, election won, job done. We are now in part. We can now save our political capital for things that matter. And did anyone know what they actually spent that political capital on? Because it looked like they spent it on eating shit at the next election. And
well, we know it wasn't trans people because they're a distraction.
Yeah. Have you tried being less distracting?
I'm so sorry. Hold on, I can turn the video off to not distract everybody and be a distraction.
Could you be less distracting, says the cis guy in the lumberjack hat?
Listen, look, it's not an insult. Sometimes my titties are distracting. They distract me.
So to win the next election, Chris Hipkins needs big naturals. Fine.
No. I think we are moving past that. I think it's big unnaturals. I believe in sensible unnaturals. No more than 550 cubic centimeters.
We are
perhaps a double D or an all the way up to F cup at most.
This is the worst.
Why is your surgeon, Sir Keir
I never
Starmer?
wanted to hear that said in that voice.
I welcome the left boob, and I invite you to go further and do the right boob.
Do the right boob.
Otherwise, I will be quite unbalanced.
Oh god, this is the lesson I didn't want any of us to ever have to learn from this live stream. Why
All right.
is this the lesson?
So the election's basically called. Might be a little while before we get an Albanese victory speech. I'm fucking calling it.
What?
I've got Liberal leader Peter Dutton due to speak on ABC. I'm not sure when, but it says Dutton's due to speak, and they're cutting live to Liberal HQ. Dylan, if you're out there, how are we going? Because
do we want to listen to what this skin stretched over skeleton two
I
sides
kind
too
of
big
do.
as the
I kind of do want to
Yeah,
listen to
I
it.
think we do.
Okay.
I think it's indicative, right? I think it's useful to understand
Dylan?
the way that they try and reframe it.
Can you turn the footage upside down?
Live Alessandro Mussolini reaction.
That is not Alessandro Mussolini in the picture.
No, Avengers is journalist.
He did it.
No.
The mad lad did it. Yes.
Yeah.
That you
So much
won't get
for-
this on the ABC. You won't get this on Sky News. You will get it here.
Yeah.
So much for the tolerant left.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the differences we have here, and some people are pointing out in the chat as well, right? Is that we at least have MMP. So even if Labour doesn't do this stuff, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori can to try with all their might to drag the Overton window. And if it looks like they're starting to get really successful, Labour is liable to do one of two things. One, start to give a few breadcrumbs in that direction. Shifting the Overton window back even a centimetre would be great. Or two, start punching left frantically. And I think in the current environment, that would almost be likely to drive the left vote up.
I was thinking about this the other day. Labour can eat shit and be bad at stuff, and we know they are. But like, if Te Pāti Māori and the Greens do a concerted get out the vote effort and actually engage with new voters in new ways and increase the overall number of people who voted, then that will necessarily potentially drop people like Winston Peters below 5%.
Yeah. But,
You know,
look,
it's not about taking his vote. It's
Yeah.
about ensuring that your vote's bigger than his vote. Again, it's this thing about no longer playing the percentages game of engaged voters. It's about trying to appeal to as wide as possible a base. You know, it's time to stop going, well, last time these people will vote for us. If we can get those out, then hopefully we'll beat these guys. Oh, wow. That's an incredible...
I'm hearing that.
That's incredible.
Elon Musk tried to make his vote bigger, and it was a botched surgery, and that's why he has to do IVF.
I think the red coverage of this is fantastic.
I think we're going to cut to Dutton.
Makes him look like he's in hell.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's listen. Everyone tune in to the seventh circle of hell.
Well, tonight's not the night that we wanted for the Liberal Party or for our coalition or indeed for our country. But we've worked hard every day over the course of the last 3 years to do our best for our amazing country. One of the great honours of being the leader of this party is that we have met people from every side, every corner, the length and breadth of this country. And there are many amazing stories. People who have sacrificed, people who are doing it hard at the moment. And I've always wanted in public life for the best for our country and the best for every Australian. The highlight of my career has been as the Defence Minister, and over the course of this campaign, on Anzac Day, we caught up with young veterans in Townsville at the RSL. And it reminded me of how lucky we are as a country. And I want to acknowledge all of those men and women in uniform who keep us safe as a country.
That's true.
Flag sugar!
Now, we didn't do well enough during this campaign. That much is obvious tonight, and I accept full responsibility for that. Earlier on, I called the Prime Minister to congratulate him on his success tonight. It's an historic occasion for the Labor Party, and we recognise that. I congratulated the Prime Minister and wished he and Jodie and Nathan all the very best. And I said to the Prime Minister that his mum would be incredibly proud of his achievement tonight, and he should be very proud of what he's achieved. Thank you. I also had the pleasure of speaking with Ali France, and Ali and I have been combatants for a number of elections now, but she was successful in Dixon tonight, and she will do a good job as a local member. She lost her son Henry, which is a tragic circumstance that no parent should ever go through. And equally, I said to Ali that her son Henry would be incredibly proud of her tonight, and she'll do a good job as a local member for Dixon, and I wish her all the very best, please. Now, it's been a great honour to be leader of this amazing party for the last 3 years. And I want to firstly acknowledge David Littleproud, who has been a great partner in crime. He's led the National Party with great distinction.
It's interesting that he does have the large adult son thing that Trump does.
Yeah, it's interesting also, like calling the Prime Minister a mummy's boy live on television was a choice.
That was very weird, right?
And it's also my victorious opponent who has a dead child.
Yeah, that was very
This
strange.
man has the political instincts of probably that dead child.
Was he making, like, when he said, like, I know Albo's mother would be proud, it's like, are you trying to say, like, that's right, me and your mother,
Yeah.
we used to talk about you in her bedroom.
She loved the man in uniform, Albo.
Respect to the troops. I mean, I've never heard that before in an Australian leader speech, but you know, respect to the troops.
Yeah, it's
I guess he's got to come back from the. So I may have inadvertently endorsed the neo-Nazi position on Anzac Day.
what a fucking loser. Has anyone seen anything with how far off an Albanese speech might be?
I've got ABC up here, and it's just kind of. He's still Dutton's still talking.
Yeah, but they're not the same party, are they?
It would be fun if they were, and Albo just kind of walked in. It's just like, get off the stage.
Metal chair. Yeah, I think probably we'll try and hang out for an Albo chat, and then we might close it up after that one.
It turns out the heckler of Anthony Albanese at the election station this week was correct. Albo, you sick cunt! Albo was indeed the sick cunt of this election. He was the hoon doing a fucking burnout over Peter Dutton's head.
If we are holding out for the Albanese speech, do we want another break or people just to go straight through?
I think we're going to go for about 20 minutes, so I think we should be able to go straight through, provided Albanese shows up soon. How are you feeling, chat? How's it going out there?
Any requests? Anything you want us to play, chat?
Anything you want us to play?
We can spin your favorite records. We can do that weird, creepy love song from Memories of Murder. We could do.
We could play the AI rap tune that the Liberal Party released about Anthony Albanese during the thing with the Drake-inspired cover.
No.
That would be very relevant. However, I put to you the beatboxing puppy.
There is the beatboxing puppy. I was also thinking about Albanese's response to that, which was, it seems they've gone for a kind of Drake thing. I'm not sure that's a good idea at the minute. Which is Anthony Albanese is a Kendrick Lamar fan and has picked his side.
I mean, all they had to do was say, "We're not like them."
Yeah.
How about drop not like us?
I can't really comment on the Drake thing in a disparaging way because I used to work somewhere that had a Drake quote on the website. So
no, that gives you more opportunity. It means you have the card.
the card. I don't think I should be given any more cards.
The Drake card.
No more cards for me. Let's see. Chat wanting Dutton to step down. Yeah, I think maybe some in his party potentially feel the same way. I think it was ABC.
He surely does, though. He surely does.
Well, actually, when the trapdoor goes, they technically step down.
Someone wants John to bring out more hats. I don't know if that's physically possible, but
It'd be a bit of a hat on a hat, wouldn't it?
If there were more breaks, there are more hats available. I was helped by my wonderful husband Ross, who is watching the stream. He was like, "Oh no, you want to wear this one?" and handed me this glorious hat, which I've been wearing the whole evening.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Another really interesting thing to note with Dutton losing Dixon is similar to Polyev. He'd held that seat for over 20 years. That's insane.
These hoes ain't loyal.
Funny, there was a right-wing politician in New Zealand who'd held his seat for at least a decade or more, thanks to some kind of arrangement with the ruling National Party, who could possibly lose his seat in the next election. And what commentators on 1 of 200 are calling the second funniest thing David Seymour could do.
Well, you have got to hand it to him.
No, Phil's not on this stream.
There are a few things I'd like to hand to him.
I meant before he does the first funniest thing.
That's right.
I don't know what would that be, Kyle? Enlighten us.
I think Winston Peters should run an Epsom. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my god, would that not be glorious?
We could just put a dome over it and then just attach an extraction pump to the top of it.
Hey, I like that Cafe Tortuga. Milano.
It'll still be there.
Whatever it's called.
Someone's saying it's time to crack the Savage Garden, and that is wild. That is a wild...
Somebody said what, sorry?
It's time to crack the Savage Garden.
That's, you know what? An Australian group.
Yeah,
they can fly us to the moon.
That is a name I have not heard in a long time.
We couldn't play Crowded House because they're a New Zealand band.
Somebody says Winston Peters running an Epsom on a platform of protecting the children.
There are so many good ways to do it. If they're serious about it, if they're really serious about it, they would do this kind of stuff. But they're not, are they? They are all in it together. Are we going to get an Albanese's speech? I don't know. Is Hipkins a Dutton or an Albanese? What do we think?
Oh,
he's Bill Shorten.
Oh no,
he is.
Fuck.
He's Bill Shorten.
I guess he's built like he came from the same human taxidermy factory as Dutton. Like, the skins were pulled off related corpses. Is what happened there.
Okay.
We've known this for a long time, but Kieran McAnulty is the closest you're going to get to Albo.
He's also an Albanian pretending to be Italian. I need everybody to answer a very serious question. Fuck, marry, kill, Keir Starmer, Anthony Albanese, Chris Hipkins.
You're going to hell. You are going to hell.
Wait, we need a fourth option so Mark Carney can be included here.
Oh, so we can exclude Hipkins,
Okay, sure.
Yeah, people who've had to have some kind of election.
Yeah, they have to have had electoral success. Hipkins, sorry, you don't cut it. You don't even get into the FMK.
I'm killing Keir. I'm fucking Albo.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm marrying Carney, like former central banker.
Yeah.
Wealthy. I have to agree that's you know what? I think you've hit it. Nail on the head.
I think that's unanimous. Unless Jenny's got, Starmer is actually the most evil by a long shot, eh?
Correct. Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with this. I'm usually the odd one out in a fuck, marry, kill for some reason, but this cohort I agree with.
Like you're with your people now, Jenny.
I'm with my people now.
You're not around a table of people calling drone strikes.
Yeah, that's true. All of us here would fuck Pauline Hanson, right? Sorry, I'm kidding. No one clip that, please. I beg you.
The reason why Simone's eyes went wide is because she saw that Jenny had been caught in a lie.
Oh, the kidding part?
Fuck you guys. God damn.
Why? I'm not Pauline Hanson.
Oh. I'm never living this one down. This will be my
look. Let 100,000 flowers bloom. Let 100 lilies bloom, but I'm not wasting any time on it because I'm a Fujoshi, not a Himejoshi.
Oh, gosh.
All right. Look, it looks like it's going to be a while before
No.
Oh, we're getting word that Albanese has arrived at the event to speak momentarily.
Okay.
Streets are saying Mamanake.
Yeah.
Are they?
Well, I mean, I guess he was summoned by our fuck, marry, kill game, and
look, who wouldn't be?
He was like, "I've got to get this speech out of the way. There's like 4 people in New Zealand who want to fuck me."
Want to is a strong word. Fuck, marry, kill is a game at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And we can maybe just bring up the seat breakdown for the most recent results. That'd be great. Thank you so much. just absolutely blowing it away here.
There we go. Absolutely.
Honestly, if that holds up, that 7% is ahead of every single poll.
This is what our friends in the ABDL community call a blowout.
It's been a good live stream.
I'm gonna have my therapist will ask me about this in a couple of days.
I
I'm gonna
almost
give
don't
her-
believe that you have a therapist.
Okay, so here's a fun fact about me. I have had multiple therapists.
We're going deep on the live stream. We're just trying to mine as much content as possible out of this while we wait for an Albanese speech.
3 out of the last 5 I've had have gone on sabbatical about 3 or 4 months after me engaging them. So.
They're cowards. I would write a paper on you.
Oh God.
I think the most fun we're going to have tomorrow is seeing Chris Luxon congratulate Anthony Albanese.
Do you think he'll remember to?
I think he will.
I can't
but
remember seeing him talk to Carney.
Well, I'm hoping. Right, it's Trans-Tasman though. You know they're going to have to do the thing. But I think it's going to be it'll be thanking him. But I'm guessing like you kind of hope that Hipkins tries to get in there first and be like, yeah, we got that you dropped.
Yeah, I don't think Hipkins would miss the opportunity to catch the shine off somebody else's victory since he's not going to have one himself.
He already did it with Ardern, right?
Well, you know, we'll find out in either next month's election stream or next year's election stream.
My body is ready.
Depending on whether or not Winston is the petty bitch we think he is.
Please be the petty bitch we think you are. Please be the petty bitch that we know
Do we
you
need to
are.
do an episode which is just theory casting this?
Yeah, we could.
Do you think we've got like a 45-minute in us minimum?
I think we have 45 minutes just of content easily to talk about this. Like, I've theory crafted way stupider topics for way longer. I think it's possible, 100%.
I mean, that was about K-pop, right?
No, it was not about. It was actually about a copyrighted video game.
Oh, a copyrighted video game, is it?
Yeah, copyrighted video
Minecraft
game of Chinese origin. That's the one.
Dear.
Hey, I'm hearing from our studio member in Australia that the lead over Dutton obviously has only increased as the night has gone on, which I think we expected, but good to hear that confirmed from various outlets. There we go. That's satisfying, isn't it? That feels good.
He's getting dixed, son.
That feels fucking good.
18% more.
I wouldn't know.
18%, that's what, like 11% more than the national result. He's despised.
Yeah. I think it's great that Ali France ran right over him despite someone who lost her leg in an accident in 2011. So that's really what he deserves.
Terrible.
I'm just going to try and pull up the polling because that last screen, Dill, could you put that back up, please? Because I've been following the Australian polling because I'm sad, and I swear to God that 7%. I know that it's going to change, but like the two-party preferred, even the most enthusiastic had it at maybe. It had it at 6%, but 47-53 in two-party preferred. No one had everyone had like it looks like they might go up, but it looks like this is a massive overperformance from Labour compared to most things, and it'll get there eventually. But that 7-point gap is huge considering that it was tied not too long ago.
Perhaps somebody can answer whether or not it is more difficult to poll something like STV than First Past the Post. Is it harder to get a general understanding of where things might go?
Good question, actually. Yes and no. I'm hearing
Okay.
from
You're hearing
guess
Google
you
yes,
asked
no?
Media.
I guess you ask people who would you vote for tomorrow, and then you ask them the follow-up question: if you had to choose between these two, who would you vote for? Because that's kind of how the preferential voting is going to work in the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, everyone knows that it's going to come down between the coalition and the Labour Party. So, but I guess it's just a two-stage questioning thing.
Yeah. No, I mean that's formally in statistics known as the Rove question. Who would you turn gay for? And if you couldn't turn gay for that person, who's your second choice to turn gay for?
That's a deep cut.
It was Anthony Albanese and then Mark Carney. I think we cleared that up earlier.
We've already- yes.
Yeah.
We are running out of steam here tonight,
We
folks.
really
You're
are.
going to really see us at our worst pretty soon.
That's no. I think I think I'm at my best when you let me do things.
What did we say? Not making any more threats, Simone. Okay, like we got.
I didn't make any threats. I told you what it was illegal to say. It's illegal for me to say that it's
it's
illegal
true.
to
It
say
is
that
true.
and to explain it.
Oh gosh.
Can I tell you more sentences that it's very illegal to say?
Please
No,
don't.
you cannot.
Do we want to sit around the Albanese speech? What does chat say?
Dylan, can you put the picture I've just dropped in the chat up on the screen, please?
I really misread that as back shots, actually, to begin with.
Oh no!
No,
How could you?
no.
You see that in the corner?
You know what? That's perfect. That's like if a drill tweet was a picture.
Yeah,
58.68% back shots.
that's really what I thought that said. I thought that said significant defeat back shots. So that's where we're at this point.
It's
in the
a
commentary.
strange
It
part
is-
of the Australian constitution that the losing candidate in the election has to take the same percentage of back shots as they lose by. Like, it's weird. It's just below the clause about birthright stuff. It's like fucking like what a weird country Australia
It would be
is.
very funny if
Really?
at a critical Australian election, New Zealand was just like, actually, we do want to take the option to become a state, and then everybody voted in the Australian election.
Aw.
We've got a bong hit from Sophie. Dutton's loss and a Labour victory are all part of a plan orchestrated by Peter Thiel to draw the last young people out of Aotearoa.
Oh shit! Oh hell!
You know, I was positive.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from, Sophie, but Peter Thiel is a New Zealand citizen who wants to bunker down here. Let me be very clear when I say he doesn't want to have fewer young people when he's in his bunker.
Oh,
He
not
wants a big
again.
supply of them.
Not again.
To be his security guards and to be able to support him in his old age.
They
That's
are
what we
able-bodied
say.
and flexible.
You know what? Yeah,
For
young
security.
people, they have a ready supply of blood. You can say that about young people. Got a lot of blood.
He loves
True.
hot-blooded, adrenochrome-filled children.
Do we have his opinions on pizza?
Oh no! That's imagine the New Zealand media running that one.
I'm hearing that our producer is contractually not liable for any libel. Well, okay, in New Zealand, there's no distinction between slander and libel. It's all called defamation. So let's start from there. Also, if
No.
we did have that distinction, if it was spoken, it would be slander, not libel. Libel's printed. So I'm
Would
afraid
the
that
YouTube-
contract
would the
is...
transcript of
Sorry?
this count as would the transcript that YouTube auto generates count as libel then?
Is it being published anywhere?
It'll be on YouTube. You'll be able to just click it and it'll say transcript and it'll have all of our.
Yeah,
I'm curious about that. That might be why we've flattened any distinction between the two. It's
Yeah,
just
on
the
closed
taunt of
captions.
defamation.
Interesting.
I mean,
many interesting questions
Yeah,
being asked on the live stream tonight. None of which
as
have-
I said earlier, I mean, obviously the things we can say about Peter Thiel is
Wow, and good on you. I mean, Albanese's had a change, been through a transition.
Albanese looks real different.
Congrats to her.
He
Honestly.
did save
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing that the deputy leader of Kmart.
Oh no.
Do you want to hear this speech, folks? We do.
26 million people from more than 300 ancestries. And from the oldest continuing civilization on the planet. And I acknowledge the traditional owners. Friends, we love this country. We love this country. And representing it to the world
Great
is
if they
the honour
started
of
booing.
my life. Because of who we are and what we strive to be. A nation that stands on its own 2 feet, that invests in the aspirations of all of its people, a nation of courage and of kindness. I saw this purpose and these principles in our campaign across the country. Our hard-working candidates, the thousands of Labor volunteers in every state and territory, in every community, working for a better future. Friends, 3 years ago, the Australian people made a collective decision to turn the page and write a new future for ourselves. Tonight, together, we start the new chapter. And we will write this next chapter so all Australians are part of our nation's story. No matter who we are or where we come from, no matter age or gender, no matter the lottery of birth, Australia's opportunity is for us all. And friends, that Australian story is embodied by our Australian Prime Minister, a man who shows what real strength is.
God, this is disgusting.
A man of courage, a man of compassion,
No.
a leader with a conviction of who we are and what we can be.
This is
When did they elect
manifest
Joseph
destiny.
Stalin?
A leader with a conviction that builds Australia's future. Friends, some might want to mimic the worst of other countries.
Oh, there's that call out, right?
Albo always backs what's best about our country.
There it is.
Please welcome my dear friend, our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
Boo! I've said it before and I'll say it again. A land acknowledgement without land back is just fucking gloating.
There you go. Oh, he did it.
He's got the tie length is right.
I'm not seeing a collar gap either.
Fuck you.
We need to know whether or not his shoes require us to call the FBI.
Just getting off the phone with his tailor now.
My fellow Australians,
Oh my god.
Fuck off.
serving as your Prime Minister is the greatest honour of my life.
Obama.
And it is with a deep sense of humility and a profound sense of responsibility that the first thing that I do tonight is to
There's
say
loads of right-wing
thank you
shit.
to the people of Australia for the chance to continue to serve the best nation on earth. And I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we may... And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging today and every day. Today, the Australian people have voted for Australian values.
Oh, there we fucking
For
go.
fairness,
Australian values.
aspiration and opportunity for all. For the strength to show courage in adversity and kindness to those in need. And Australians have voted for a future that holds true to these values. A future built on everything that brings us together as Australians and everything that sets our nation apart from the world. In this time of global uncertainty, Australians have chosen optimism and determination. Australians have chosen to face global challenges the Australian way, looking after each other while building for the future. And to serve these values, meet these challenges, seize these opportunities and build that better and stronger future, Australians have chosen a majority Labor government.
All right, do we want to see any more?
Wow,
of this?
inspiring words from Obama in 2008.
Yeah, let's cut it. Let's cut it. We're done. I don't want to see any more of this guy. Wait, what the fuck happened?
Labour won.
I fear we haven't quite coordinated our wardrobes today. I seem to have put more clothes on out of a deep sense of shame of growing up in Australia, and some of our hosts have derobed in celebration instead. So
Tits out for Alba.
I've got my elbows out, but that's about as far as I'm willing to go.
I'm just glad that Dutton didn't win Dixon, otherwise we'd have a real problem with the stream.
Hey, I think there's not much more to say.
Hey, you would have a real problem with the stream. I don't know about.
There's not much more to say. Well, we'll see over the next few days which direction this Labor majority government in Australia is likely to go. I just want to say a huge thank you to the audience for popping in, to all my co-hosts tonight, to Dylan in the background on production, getting all these graphics up, getting our mics going, and making sure you can hear us throughout the evening. Jenny, where can people find you?
People can find me on all the awful places. My handle's the same, at Eggs for Dogs, and I'll be there, laughing or crying. Who knows?
Simone.
I would like to thank our sponsors at the Mount Albert Noodle House for the irregular interruptions of me pulling chopsticks to my mouth throughout this evening. People can find me at Original Mythros on x.com, the Everything app. Everything happens there. And it's just at mythros.bisky.social on Blue Sky. But probably don't follow me there, I think.
Why would you mention it?
Let's say no. Let's Mitch cut that.
No, we can't cut the live stream.
And John, where can people find you?
There. On Blue Sky.
What on OnlyFans?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say.
Look, I'm praising Dylan's graphics. Come on, like, you know, my Blue Sky handle is there. I also do Posting Cast, which you can find on all good platforms and Spotify and Apple ones too. Other than that, I will be trying to work out if I have any clothes left after this evening.
Wait, are we doing podcasts as well?
No.
No, okay.
And you're already here on 10200 YouTube. Hopefully you found out this is happening via our Blue Sky and Twitter accounts or our Instagram. Follow us everywhere. Subscribe to this one if you haven't already. We'll be trying to bring up some more content in the future. We are gearing up towards the 2026 New Zealand elections. There'll be some credits showing up.
Or the 2025 New Zealand election.
Oh yes, absolutely.
We're
Correct.
getting any final reactions from chat?
We're getting some, yes. Thank you again for everyone who is here. And we'll catch you next time.
Catch you next time.
In the off-world colonies, the chance to begin again in a golden land of opportunity and